Chapter 948. Why did these words sound so familiar? In fact, it was half-baked. Upon hearing this, Ancestor Nan Ming, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, pondered for a moment and immediately became spirited. Especially the opening line, "Heaven and earth have righteousness." Wasn't this the mantra of Bai Changchun's starting gesture? As expected of Bai Changchun's disciple, it was Bai Changchun's personal great technique. Now he could rest assured. Ancestor Nan Ming's nervous heart calmed down. He had misgivings about Yu Qianzhou's character, but he still had confidence in the ability that Bai Changchun had taught him. That old fellow who had fought against heaven and earth and presided over the demon domain for 1,000 years was not just any ordinary person. He could be said to be a peerless genius. Now that things had come to this, he was the first to comfort himself. Little did he know that the skill that Yu Qianzhou was using now had nothing to do with his master, Bai Changchun. He just wanted to take the opportunity to intimidate the Ape King, which could be considered as giving his hero army an extra layer of protection in the divine ruin realm. However, this guy wanted to make himself more majestic and wondered if he should say something to increase his momentum. After thinking about it, he still felt that the old man's style was the most domineering. Every word and action was sparkling. Thus, he conveniently adapted and borrowed it, but in terms of momentum he was still a little inferior to his master. One was putting on an act, while the other was communicating with the mantra of heaven and earth. At least in terms of tone, he lacked that kind of confidence that was deep in his bones. Putting on an act was just putting on an act. In fact, how could the little tricks of demons and monsters be compared to the majesty of true righteousness? There was no comparison at all. However, coupled with his follow-up methods, it was enough to scare people. Heaven and earth have righteousness, wind, fire, thunder, and lightning listen to my command, wind rises and clouds surge. The Ape King's brain turned to reflect on the meaning of this sentence. He thought to himself, what a big tone. Isn't he afraid of losing his tongue? Using thunder and lightning to cast a body? Let's see how you can create thunder and lightning in a clear sky. Just as he turned his head to look at the clear sky, a gust of wind suddenly blew over. The black smoke coming out of the cave in the middle of the mountain was immediately blown into a blur. His fiery red long hair was also blown around by the strong wind, causing it to dance wildly in the wind. It's really windy? The Ape King was slightly startled. Suddenly, he saw that the clear sky was gradually turning gray and hazy. He did not know if it was because of the billowing black smoke that was being blown away behind him. However, the gradually darkening sky told him the answer. Rolling dark clouds gradually gathered in the sky. When the dark clouds shrouded the entire sky, the world became dark and oppressive. Rumble. A dull and shocking thunder rumbled in the dark clouds. Even through the dark clouds, the thunder still shone brightly on the vast land. Although Ancestor Nan Ming and the Ape King had vaguely guessed what was going to happen next, they were still shocked when they saw the wind, clouds, and rolling thunder appear out of nowhere. Could it be that the wind, fire, thunder, and lightning in the world really listened to him? Ancestor Nan Ming suddenly looked at Yu Qianzhou, who had the demeanor of a grandmaster and was facing heaven and earth with his hands clasped behind his back. He could not help but sigh inwardly. He is indeed Bai Changchun's disciple and the punishment envoy of the demon region. I wonder how high his cultivation is now. Gotcha. A bolt of lightning descended from the dark clouds and descended on the vast land. It was a vast expanse of green in front of him, which immediately pulled Ancestor Nan Ming's attention back. He looked up and saw that the dark clouds were already filled with electric snakes, and the image of thunder and lightning was ready to strike. The violent wind blew endlessly, causing the clothes of the three of them to flutter loudly. The Ape King looked at the scene of heaven and earth changing color and instantly felt that he was so small under the power of heaven and earth. It was as if a gust of wind could blow him away without a trace. Mr. Nan Ming, it's about to begin. Get ready. Yu Qianzhou glanced at the Ape King as he said this. If it was not for the sake of intimidating this fellow, there was no need to make such a big commotion. In fact, he was now very familiar with the control of thunder and lightning. He did not need to make a big scene to help Ancestor Nan Ming cast his body. All right. Ancestor Nan Ming's voice was a little shaky. How could he know that Yu Qianzhou made such a big scene just to watch? The thunderbolt was aimed at him. It was too frightening. He was trembling with fear as he guessed whether he could withstand it or not. Brat, you better not fail. There was no time for him to think too much. Rumble. A bolt of lightning had already drilled out of the dark clouds and instantly struck his body. Sizzle, sizzle. Rings of electricity flowed up and down his body, which was sitting cross-legged. Ancestor Nan Ming's mind was blank at first. When he recovered, he realized that Yu Qianqiu had perfect control of the power of thunder and lightning. He immediately heaved a sigh of relief and began to improve his body according to Yu Qianqiu's instructions. He could really control thunder and lightning. The Ape King stared at the bolt of lightning that connected heaven and earth in bewilderment. It hung between heaven and earth and kept sizzling and twisting, not disappearing. This scene made his mind go blank as well, as if the lightning had struck him. When he slowly came back to his senses, he felt that the unparalleled power of heaven and earth could actually be controlled by someone. He looked at Yu Qianqiu with eyes full of reverence. When the bolt of lightning that connected heaven and earth retracted back into the sky, the sound of thunder in the dark clouds gradually subsided. The lightning disappeared and the dark clouds also began to dissipate rapidly. In a short while, the blue sky was once again supported by the sun. Everything was like a dream or an illusion. The Ape King, who had witnessed this scene with his own eyes, dared not believe that it was real. However, in front of him, the naked Master Nanming stood up slowly. He was laughing wildly with his arms wide open. This had already explained everything. Otherwise, not many old fellows would be so excited to the point of being so shameless and frank. He had forgotten himself. "I say, old fellow, don't you think you should put on your clothes?" It was truly unsightly. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head to look at the horizon and sneered, "You dare to compete with heaven and earth whose bird is bigger? You're the only one in the three realms. Aren't you afraid of heaven's wrath?" Nanming Ancestor's neck tightened as if someone was choking him. He hurriedly took out his clothes and put them on. The awkwardness was just a fleeting moment for him. Compared to his cultivation reaching the immortal realm and successfully forging an immortal body, everything else was just fleeting clouds. Now he could live forever. Yu Qianqiu, everything is ready now. What treasure do you want to refine? We can start working now. Nanming Ancestor moved to Yu Qianqiu's side and smiled awkwardly. In his entire life, it was people who begged him to refine treasures. This was the first time he took the initiative to ask for permission. Even Bai Changchun did not enjoy such treatment when he was in his hands. However, who asked him to receive such a great benefit from others? It would be inexcusable if he did not express his gratitude. Under their gazes, Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself for a moment before saying, "Go and make your preparations. I'll decide what I want to refine when I return." With a combination of strength and gentleness, he had already subdued both master and disciple. Since he had put in so much effort, it was only natural that he would receive something in return. His tone of voice already carried a hint of ordering his subordinates around. With these words, he transformed into a stream of light and swiftly flew into the distance. In the valley within the misty sea of fog, after Zhang Ping sent his men to investigate the surrounding terrain, he quickly arranged for the army to construct appropriate fortifications on the spot. Bunkers and hidden sentry posts radiated out from the valley in all directions. Inside the valley, Yu Qianqiu and Zhang Ping, the master and disciple duo, gathered a few others together. They kept using the soil to conduct some sort of experiment. After they were done, Zhang Ping quickly led them away. After Yu Qianqiu made a few rounds around the enormous underground works in the valley, Zhang Pengfang returned with a few jade archives and handed them to him. Yu Qianqiu then left after leaving some instructions to Zhang Pengfang. Zhang Pengfang had no idea what he was up to. With the jade archives in hand, Yu Qianqiu excitedly rushed back to Mount Great Flaming. When he barged into the cave and saw the master and disciple from Nanming, he waved the jade archives in his hand and said, "Let's get to work. Let's get to work." He put away the jade archives and leaped onto the huge, pitch-black platform. Grandmaster Nanming flashed to his side and asked curiously, "What kind of treasure are you planning to refine?" Yu Qianqiu sized up the size of the huge, pitch-black platform, then asked, "I want to refine a batch of armor. What do you think?" Using the extraterrestrial metal to refine armor? Grandmaster Nanming was stunned. Isn't that too much of a waste? Normal armor won't do. With you around, can't you refine them all into treasures? As Yu Qianqiu spoke, he was suddenly stunned. He looked at Grandmaster Nanming and smiled. Extraterrestrial metal? Looks like you've already come up with a name for this item. It's a good name. Let's call the refined armor the extraterrestrial metal armor. Grandmaster Nanming was speechless. What was he talking about? Nanming, I've already thought of the appearance of the extraterrestrial metal armor. What do you think? Yu Qianqiu said to himself as he took a few steps back. He slowly opened his arms, and the pupils of Grandmaster Nanming and Ape King suddenly shrank. They saw that the huge, pitch-black platform suddenly seemed to come alive. Like a group of black ants, They climbed up from under Yu Qianzhou's feet and quickly covered Yu Qianzhou's entire body. A Yu Qianzhou wearing armor with only a pair of eyes revealed stood in front of the master and disciple. That wasn't the end of it. The armor continued to change its outer shape. Small and sharp spikes that were about 1 centimeter long covered the surface of the armor. Especially on the shoulders, there were 3 1-inch spikes in a triangular shape. There were also 1-inch spikes on the elbows and the backs of the palms, knees and soles of the feet. There was even a long sword on his back. The entire armor looked abnormally ferocious and evil. Dang, dang, dang. Yu Qianzhou walked a few steps in the armor. He scolded in a low, muffled voice through the dozens of small holes on his mouth that almost covered his entire face. Damn it, the extraterrestrial metal is indeed a little too heavy. I can't kill others like this, and I'm so clumsy that I can only wait for others to kill me. Then, he turned his head and looked at Grandmaster Nan Ming. Nan Ming, what do you think is the most suitable thickness? Grandmaster Nan Ming didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he walked in front of him. He looked at the thickness of the armor around his eyes and found that it was at least 1 centimeter thick. He said weakly, "It's too thick. In addition to the spikes all over your body, it would be strange if it wasn't heavy. Let's reduce it by 90%. Chapter 949. 90% thinner? Yu Qianzhou was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He shrieked, "Then isn't it only 1 millimeter thick? It's too thin, too thin. No, it can't block anything. Can that still be considered armor? If it wasn't for the weight, I'd think it's too thin for 1 centimeter. 1 millimeter isn't thin." Nan Ming Patriarch tried his best to explain, "Don't forget what this is. This is the metal essence from beyond the heavens. With just this 1 millimeter thickness, even if you let Xuanhuan use all of his strength, he wouldn't be able to break through it. If it wasn't for the fact that we have to add a formation to it and that we need a certain thickness when refining it again, I think it'd be better to make it thinner. If someone's cultivation is so high that they can break through the metal essence from beyond the heavens, it'd be useless even if you add another meter. They can still break through it. Moreover, after adding a formation inside, its defense will be greatly increased." What you said makes sense. As he spoke, the armor on his body retreated like the tide, merging back into the large black platform beneath his feet. Yu Qianzhou waved the remaining thin piece in his hand and said, "Wait for me, I'll be back soon." He rushed out of the belly of the mountain. He had to find someone to test whether this 1 millimeter thickness was solid or not. The master and disciple looked at each other, not knowing what he was going to do. Suddenly, Nan Ming Patriarch noticed that Ape King's forehead was drenched in sweat. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What's wrong with you?" Ape King wiped his sweat and stared at the black platform in a daze. He then asked with lingering fear, "Master, just how high is his cultivation?" He was truly frightened by Yu Qianzhou's methods. He had used 50,000 years to accumulate the metal essence from beyond the heavens in the belly of the mountain. Now that he saw Yu Qianzhou using it as if it was a toy, it was no different from having a nightmare. "You're asking me?" Nan Ming Patriarch shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Who should I ask? I don't know what level his cultivation has reached, but in short, he can't be predicted with common sense. He's a monster." On the 22nd floor of the World Chamber of Commerce, a door opened and Yu Qianzhou rushed out. He flew to the side of Wei Chuanxiu, who was sitting cross-legged at the door. He first glanced inside the door, then casually set up a soundproof barrier. Holding the thin piece of extraterrestrial metal essence armor plate that was only 1 millimeter thick, he waved it in front of Wei Chuanxiu, who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, and said, "Bat King Wei, look what I've brought you." Wei Chuanxiu opened her eyes without hesitation. She stared blankly at the black object in front of her for a while. Then she stood up and asked suspiciously, "Why are you so kind as to give me something good? Isn't it just a piece of broken metal? What good is this?" You don't know this. It took me a lot of effort to get this thing." Yu Qianzhou smiled sinisterly as he waved the thing in his hand and said, "This is called extraterrestrial metal essence. Don't be fooled by its small size, but its defense is amazing. I can guarantee that even if you use all your cultivation, you won't be able to break it." "Are you serious? It's really as powerful as you say?" Wei Chuanxiu's eyes lit up. She was instantly intrigued by Yu Qianzhou and was about to reach out to take a look. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianzhou hid it behind him and said with a smile, "Since you don't believe me, let's make a bet?" Wei Chuanxiu immediately became alert and sneered, "What bet? I think you're up to no good again. What extraterrestrial metal essence? I've never heard of it. It's just a piece of broken metal. You can give it to me if you want, but I don't care." Look at you. I told you that you don't believe me. If this is considered a piece of broken metal, then there's nothing good in this world. Xianxia took out the piece of metal from behind him with a look of disdain and sighed, how about this? In order to verify that this piece of metal you said is really indestructible, let's make a bet. If you can't break it, then I'm sorry. I'll take it back and not give it to you. If you can break it, then I'll give it to you. Really indestructible? Xianxia thought that whether she gave it to him or not, there was no loss to her. She took the thing in her hand and flicked it with her finger. In the end, she found that it was really not an ordinary thing. Her eyes lit up again and she immediately became spirited. How is it? I didn't lie to you, did I? Xianxia urged, quickly try it and see if you can break it. With a dang sound, Xianxia's finger touched it with a green light. Then they put their heads together and looked at it. There was no mark on it at all. Xianxia immediately exclaimed, and then a series of green light poked on the broken piece of metal. After a series of dang 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 sounds, there were some slight scratches on it, but it was far from being damaged. Such a thin thing was actually so indestructible. Xianxia immediately clicked her tongue and said in surprise, it's really a good thing. Of course. Xianxia was delighted, but he didn't forget to ask, Old Bat, is that all you can do? Have you used all your cultivation? Just a little more. If you can't break it, I'll take it back. Why are you in such a hurry? Xianxia rolled her eyes, then she mustered up her strength and poked the piece of metal for a while. However, only some slight scratches were left, which was really incredible. Xianxia was still unwilling to give up. He held the two sides of the piece of metal and used all his strength to pry it open. This thing is called extraterrestrial metal essence, right? Where did you get it? I really can't use my hands and feet here. It looks like I have to find a secluded place to attack it. Otherwise, it'll be really hard to break it open. This is a good thing. It can't be better to refine it into a treasure. The piece of metal showed signs of bending when he used so much strength, but once he relaxed, it immediately returned to its original shape. All right. Stop for a while. Xianxia took the thing from his hand and put it away, saying, look at how strenuous you are. It'll be a waste if you continue. He turned around and left. He was satisfied that the experiment had reached this stage. Even Wei Bat King couldn't break it with his cultivation, so there was nothing more to say. If he let Elder Nanming refine it a little more, its defense would probably be even stronger. It's fine as long as I know what I'm doing. I'll try again when the armor is done. Xianxia, don't go. I haven't used my full strength yet. I'll try again, Xianxia shouted from behind. He was prepared to trick Xianxia into giving him such a good thing. Unfortunately, Xianxia didn't fall for his trick at all. Even if you're as treacherous as a ghost, you still have to drink the water I wash my feet with. Xianxia turned around and chuckled. He waved his hand at Xianxia and went into one of the rooms. Xianxia looked at the guarded door behind him and thought for a while before sitting down cross-legged. However, just as he closed his eyes, he suddenly opened them again. In a flash, he chased after the room that Xianxia had gone into. In the end, he discovered that Xianxia had already disappeared. He immediately gritted his teeth. Only after he calmed down did he realize that he had been tricked by Xianxia. Xianxia had gone around in circles and didn't know how to react. He couldn't understand why he would be so stupid as to make such a bet with Xianxia. If the item couldn't be broken, it wouldn't be given to him. If it was broken, it would be given to him. Wouldn't he be at a disadvantage regardless of whether he won or lost? If things could be broken, why would he want a broken item? Is this kid too free? Why did he come here to play this game? Xianxia thought about it and found it strange. There didn't seem to be any benefits for Xianxia to make this bet. However, what he didn't know was that Xianxia was purely using him as an experiment. What would he think if he found out? In the belly of the great flaming mountain, Xianxia had already put on his armor again. After experimenting, he listened to Patriarch Nanming's suggestion and reduced the armor's thickness by 90%. Naturally, the weight was reduced by a lot. Then, under Patriarch Nanming's suggestion, he wore the armor and performed various body movements. The spikes that hindered the flexibility of his joints were all removed. The spikes on the inner parts of his limbs and the spikes that hindered the bending of certain parts of his body were all removed. As a result, the weight was greatly reduced. Finally, he made adjustments to the armor to make it more comfortable and human-like, so that it could be quickly put on and taken off at any time. After the weight was reduced, Xianxia pulled out the longsword on his back. He swung the sword around and flew a few rounds in the belly of the mountain before landing in front of Patriarch Nanming. He smiled and said, "Please help me refine this sword as well." Not only will this set of equipment have an indestructible defense, it will also have an unstoppable attack power. Please. As he said this, he sheathed the long sword on his back and took off the armor on his body. Patriarch Nanming smiled bitterly as he received the armor. He sighed and said, "I will do my best." "What are you doing?" In a flash, Xianxia returned to the pitch-black platform. He took out a few jade archives, held them in his hands and closed his eyes. The jade archives recorded the detailed data of the nearly 10,000 members of the hero army. The reason he had sought out Zhang Peng and the rest for this very moment. After a while, several hundred sets of armor slowly floated up from the large platform, surrounding Xianxia. None of the armor was empty. The parts that revealed their eye sockets were empty, but each of them stood straight with a long sword slung on their back. In addition, the uniform design of the armor made them look ferocious and terrifying. One couldn't help but suspect that they were ghostly soldiers of the netherworld who had crawled out from the ground. Xianxia opened his eyes, took out a storage bracelet and wore it on his wrist. He stored the several hundred sets of armor inside. This was only the first batch. Immediately after, several dozen batches of similar ferocious empty armors appeared on the pitch-black platform. In total, nearly 10,000 sets of ferocious empty armors were all stored inside the storage bracelet. After preparing all the sets of the hero army, Xianxia stopped. The 4-meter-thick platform beneath his feet was now only slightly more than a meter thick. At this moment, Xianxia took off the storage bracelet in his hand and took out an empty storage bracelet. He then walked towards the dumbfounded Patriarch Nanming. Chapter 950. Looking at the approaching Xianxia, Patriarch Nanming asked in a panic, "Xianxia, what are you doing?" He really didn't expect Xianxia's so-called batch to be so big. It was too scary. Xianxia handed over the 2 storage bracelets in his hand and said with a smile, "You taught Xuanhuan the crafting skills, so you have to let him practice. Just take these things as practice for Xuanhuan." As he said that, he looked at Xuanhuan and asked, "Xuanhuan, what do you think? If it's not enough, I'll make more." Xuanhuan recovered from the shock of the appearance of the large number of armors and looked at Patriarch Nanming with surprise and joy. Patriarch Nanming waved his hand and said, no need, I don't need so much." "Senior Nanming." Xianxia's expression turned solemn and he sent a voice transmission word by word. "Do you really think that these things are for your disciple to practice with? I don't mind telling you the truth. In this Ruins of God, I have already selected a large number of reliable candidates from the human world to train here. I helped all of them raise their cultivation to the immortal realm like you. In order for us human cultivators to have a foothold in the immortal realm, they are ready to sacrifice themselves at any time. Although they all have the determination to die, we can't just watch them go through fire and water. We have to do our best to give them the greatest guarantee of safety. This is the reason why I asked you to refine this batch of armors. Do you really have the heart to refuse?" Patriarch Nanming wanted to say that it had nothing to do with him, but he had received a great favor from him before, so it was really hard for him to directly reject it. After a pause, he replied with a voice transmission, "Xianxia, you are making things difficult for me. If I didn't see wrongly, this batch of armors is probably close to 10,000 sets. Even if I want to help you, I can't. The number is too large, it's beyond my ability. I'm not worried about this. With Senior Nanming's crafting skills, I'm sure you can find a suitable solution. Besides, I don't need it right away. I still have some time for you to prepare. Also, I won't let you work for nothing." Xianxia asked through voice transmission, "I wonder if Senior Nanming is interested in completing your ancestors' unfulfilled wish and regaining control of the mythical fire palace, the #1 artificer sect in the immortal world?" "Not interested." Ancestor Nanming vetoed him flatly. After thinking for a while, he sighed and said, "Xianxia, you don't have to waste your efforts to tempt me. I'll agree to it. Just treat it as returning the favor. However, I have to make this clear. I can only promise that I will do my best. As for whether I can satisfy your needs or not, that's not a guarantee." Zhang Xian took the storage bracelet from the other party's hand and wore it on his left and right wrists. As long as he agreed. Xianxia smiled and nodded. He didn't force it anymore. As the saying goes, there will always be a way when the time comes. When the time comes, there will naturally be a way. After a long conversation between the two of them, Xianxia arranged everything that needed to be arranged in the Ruins of God and left without any worries for the time being. In the following journey, he went back and forth between the human world and Utopia to deal with the matter of gathering people to refine pills. Now that he had the final say in the entire human world, there was almost no resistance when it came to matters in the human world. After returning to the World Chamber of Commerce, he was immediately questioned by Wei Chuanxiu. However, Yu Qianqiu had a way to get away. He only said that he had an appointment to discuss the matter regarding the demon core. Although Wei Chuanxiu was clamoring, she had no temper and could only let him leave. In the eyes of outsiders, the business of the World Chamber of Commerce was still miserable. Yu Qianqiu walked around the deserted hall downstairs a few times and found that there was not a single customer. He didn't think much of it, but when Jing Yuankong heard that he was here, he quickly found him in the hall and said bluntly, "It's fine if the business is a little lacking, but it's not good if the business is broken. No matter what, we have to keep it going. Otherwise, it'll be too weird if we don't do anything in the psychedelic immortal city." Yu Qianqiu thought that it made sense. He casually placed some immortal herbs for Jing Yuankong to arrange, looked around and asked, "Where did you Nantian go?" He should still be wandering around the psychedelic immortal city gathering information. He should be back a little later. Jing Yuankong looked outside the door and asked, "Should I call him over?" "No need, go do what you need to do." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and walked straight out of the World Chamber of Commerce. Jing Yuankong smiled bitterly. He couldn't think of anything to be busy about. The Wangutong branch was bustling with people. Compared to the World Chamber of Commerce, the difference was like heaven and earth. After hearing that Yu Qianqiu had arrived, Wang Yi personally came out to welcome him. The two of them sat down in the back hall. "I don't see Miss Wan Ling. Could she have returned to Myriad Saint's palace?" Yu Qianqiu looked around and asked casually. She went to watch the ranking conference." Wang Yi smiled and said, "Did Sect Master you come here specially to find her? I can think of a way to contact her and get her to come back as soon as possible." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Even though his World Chamber of Commerce didn't go to the ranking conference, he wanted to go and broaden his horizons. Unfortunately, Heartless Palace kept a close eye on him. It really wasn't convenient for him to run around. Regretfully, he shook his head and said, "That's not necessary. I'm here to ask how the purchase of beast cores is going." Wei Chuanxiu couldn't keep fooling around. Since he came up with this excuse, he had to bring something back to report. That was why he came here. "I've already purchased more than 500 and was about to send it to World Chamber of Commerce. I didn't expect Sect Master you to grace us with your presence." Wang Yi took out a storage bag and handed it to Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu injected his divine sense into it and put it away. He was about to leave when Wang Yi, who had been observing him, interrupted first and said, "I wonder what gift Sect Master you has prepared for Immortal Emperor?" "Gift?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned and asked suspiciously, "Why would you give a gift out of the blue? Doesn't Sect Master you know?" Wang Yi said strangely, "Immortal Palace will hold a grand wedding ceremony for Immortal Emperor and Immortal Monarch Jiwu in a year. No, I should call her Immortal Empress now. Immortal Palace will hold a grand wedding ceremony for Immortal Emperor and Immortal Empress Jiwu in a year." A few days ago, Immortal Palace announced to the entire Immortal World that they will invite all the Sect Masters of the Immortal World to gather at Immortal Palace to congratulate them. After saying that, he observed Yu Qianqiu's expression and was slightly puzzled. However, Yu Qianqiu really didn't know about this. To be exact, he didn't have time to know about it. After hearing Wang Yi's words, he couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. He didn't know if Immortal Crocodile Monarch had leaked the matter of him touching Ji Wu's butt. If one day Immortal Emperor Jin Tai heard about it, then he would be doomed. At least, he would have no place in the Immortal World. "Oh." Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said perfunctorily, "This matter. See, I almost forgot about it. Sigh. I have a headache thinking about the gift for Immortal Emperor. I don't know what to give." "Keep pretending. How could you forget about such a big thing? You are clearly from the Immortal Palace. It doesn't matter if you give a gift or not, so I didn't take it to heart at all." Wang Yi probed a little and smiled, thinking he knew what was going on. "That's true. The Immortal Emperor's wedding is not an ordinary wedding. He is the supreme of the Immortal World. I really have to think about the gift." Just as the two were talking about the wedding of the Immortal Emperor and Ji Wu, one of the parties involved was helpless. The Immortal Palace shone brightly in the sky, and below it was the dazzling Crystal Palace. In the courtyard, Lu Yanqing carefully accompanied Ji Wu, but Ji Wu looked up at the Immortal Palace floating in the auspicious clouds with a frown. At first, the Immortal Emperor gave her a 1-month deadline to consider the marriage. After the 1-month deadline, the Immortal Emperor came again to interrogate her. Ji Wu naturally found an excuse to refuse. However, as Yi Shuejun expected, the Immortal Emperor really lost his patience and took a hard approach. But to Xuanhuan's surprise, the immortal emperor captured him on the spot and used him to threaten Jiwu. He once again gave Jiwu a deadline to think about it. The consequences of refusing again, the immortal emperor's actions were clear. Xuanhuan would be the first to suffer. After some consideration, Jiwu had no choice. She also knew that she could not escape the immortal emperor's control. Most importantly, why should Xuanhuan be implicated? She had no choice but to agree to the immortal emperor. However, she still held a glimmer of hope and made a final effort to delay. She could marry, but she had to have a year to adjust her emotions. Otherwise, she would not be able to accept the reality of being forced. At this point, the immortal emperor naturally had no reason to force her. Besides, for him, what was the difference between a year and a snap of the fingers? So he agreed to Jiwu and ordered people to send a message to the entire immortal world on the spot. This was to force Jiwu to have no room to regret. However, a few days passed and Jiwu still did not see Xuanhuan being released. She could not help but wonder if Xuanhuan had been killed. Today she had made up her mind. If she did not see Xuanhuan return, she would not hesitate to break into the immortal palace and fall out with immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Lu Yanqing stood quietly behind Jiwu. Her mood had not completely calmed down. Even in her wildest dreams, she didn't expect that her sudden decision would cause her to witness something unimaginable. She was by Jiwu's side and witnessed the entire process of immortal Emperor Jin Tai's forced marriage. She didn't expect that these high and mighty characters, who were rarely seen by ordinary people, would have such a face. Immortal Empress, let me play the guqin for you, Lu Yanqing said behind Jiwu. Ever since she was brought here, Jiwu would ask her to play and sing almost every day. However, since Xuanhuan was taken away, she did not ask for it anymore. Immortal Empress? Don't mention this in front of me in the future. Jiwu looked at the sky with some confusion and murmured, Lu Yanqing, Lingfang Valley must be beautiful. Lu Yanqing responded subconsciously, then her whole body shook. She suddenly looked up at Jiwu's back in horror. How did she know about Lingfang Valley? Chapter 951. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed through Lu Yanqing's mind. Although her way of doing things was different from others, it did not mean that she was not smart. One thing she was sure of was that Jiwu definitely did not guess the name of Lingfang Valley blindly, and it was impossible for her to guess it so accurately. Moreover, she even asked the owner of Lingfang Valley. Obviously, Jiwu wanted her here because she already knew about her relationship with Lingfang Valley. Did she also know that the world commerce's people were smuggled from the human world? Was she the only one who knew about this? Or did others also know about this? Or perhaps she was just testing me, but I actually responded just now. Oh my god. What did I do? Thinking that once these secrets were leaked, the entire world commerce's people would suffer, Lu Yanqing could not help but turn pale with fright, and her delicate body broke out in a cold sweat. Unfortunately, she could not recognize that the person who followed Yu Qianqiu in Lingfang Valley was Xuanhuan, who had been captured by the immortal emperor. Otherwise, she could more or less guess something and would not be as clueless as she was now. However, Xuanhuan's hair was full of small braids, and he was purely dressed as a tribal savage. Even his skin color had been specially changed. He was a completely different person from now, so how could she easily recognize him? She did not know when, but Jiwu had turned to look at her and asked, Are you afraid? Are you afraid of something else, or are you afraid that I will reveal your secret? I don't understand what immortal monarch is talking about. Lu Yanqing replied nervously, her heart in turmoil. At this time she suddenly thought of Yu Qianqiu. She believed that if Yu Qianqiu was here, he would definitely have a way to deal with such a matter properly. She instantly understood Yu Qianqiu's ruthlessness. If it was Yu Qianqiu, based on Yu Qianqiu's character, the first thing he would think of was to silence them. She suddenly understood something. Sometimes, if one was not ruthless and decisive, the consequences of the situation would be very terrifying. The lives of many people would be implicated in it. However, these thoughts only flashed through her mind. Some things that were deeply engraved in her heart could not be changed. Not to mention that she did not have the ability to silence Jiwu. Even if she had the ability, she still could not do it. Don't you understand what I'm saying? Jiwu's cold face revealed a slight smile. She stared at Lu Yan and said, Why are your eyes evasive? Why don't you look at me like you usually do? That's because you have a guilty conscience. You're not a liar at all, so why force yourself? Lu Yanqing was indeed a person who did not know how to lie, but that was only because of the environment she had grown up in. Now that she thought of the serious consequences she would face, she had no choice but to bite the bullet. She lowered her head slightly and tried her best to keep her voice calm. I really don't understand what the immortal monarch is saying. Do you really not understand? Jiwu walked over to Lu Yanqing, who had her head down. She stretched out one of her hands that were wrapped around her lower abdomen, and lifted Lu Yanqing's chin with her slender fingers. Looking at Lu Yanqing's beautiful face, she sighed, such a delicate beauty and a kind nature. For a woman like you to be able to put down her pride and confess her love to others, how much courage must she have mustered? I just don't understand what's so bad about you, that Xianxia could actually harden his heart to reject you. If it was any other man, I'm afraid it would be exactly what they wanted. As soon as these words came out, Lu Yanqing felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her entire body trembled as she looked at the cold and beautiful face in front of her. The other party's clear and wise eyes seemed to be able to directly see through her heart, causing all the secrets in her heart to be exposed. She even knew about this? I really don't understand what the immortal monarch is saying. Lu Yanqing's entire body trembled as she took a step back, breaking away from the hand that was holding her chin. At this point she really didn't know what to do, so she could only bite the bullet and not admit it. However, the other party's temperament of being in a high position for countless years really made her feel a little uncomfortable. The world of mortals is laughable, infatuation is the most boring, supercilious is also good. Jiwu suddenly opened her lips and softly sang a sentence, like a pearl falling on a jade plate, the sound of spring water gurgling, the clear and exquisite voice moving. Then she looked at Lu Yanqing and said with a smile, "This is what you played for me to listen to. Aren't you very open-minded, and also saying that infatuation is the most boring? Why do you still have to keep the secret for Xianxia? Or rather, this song was originally sung by that fickle Xianxia?" Lu Yanqing did not hide this point. Under Jiwu's constant pressure, she finally bit her lips and said, "The songs I played and sang all came from Xianxia, but it has nothing to do with anything else that the immortal monarch said." A sweet smile appeared on Jiwu's face, as if she was happy to confirm the answer she wanted to know. She shook her head and said with a smile, "Lu Yanqing, didn't Xianxia tell you about me?" She was quite confident in her appearance, otherwise she would not have been able to enter the eyes of the immortal emperor. Presumably, after Xianxia saw her, he would not be able to forget her, and would unintentionally mention her on some occasions. However, she had overestimated herself and underestimated Xianxia. Xianxia was indeed not a good person. When he saw that she was beautiful, he had dirty thoughts, but it was only once. In fact, he did not care about her at all. If he had to say that he cared about her, it would not be because of the relationship between a man and a woman. It was purely because he was afraid that she and her future husband would deal with him. Lu Yanqing was startled, her eyes flashed for a moment, and then she said suspiciously, "Immortal monarch means that you know Xianxia? How do you know him? I really have never heard him mention you." "Never heard him mention me?" Jiwu suddenly smiled a little forced. All women with some beauty, whether they were good or bad, had a common problem. They always thought that they were very attractive to men. They always thought that men would not forget about them and would revolve around them. And the man who ignored her would make her feel uncomfortable. However, Xianxia was very realistic. No matter how beautiful a woman was, he could not bite her. He was too lazy to think about it. What does it have to do with me? Lu Yanqing shook her head blankly. Indeed, she had not heard Xianxia mention her. Jiwu saw that she did not seem to be lying, and her face returned to calmness. She smiled faintly. "You should have heard that I was trapped in the heaven and earth xianhuan formation in the human world. In fact, I knew Xianxia in the human world. If it was not for his help, Brother Crocodile and I would not have been able to return to the immortal world smoothly. So, I already know your origins, why do you have to hide it? I'm just curious, how did you come to the immortal world?" People always have to experience more things to mature. Lu Yanqing learned to be obedient this time. It was a big deal. She did not dare to admit it easily. She was a little worried that the other party was lying to her, so she bit her lip and did not answer for a long time. "Brother Crocodile once followed Xianxia to your Lingfang Valley and witnessed the process of you courting Xianxia. Don't you remember Brother Crocodile at all?" Jiwu reminded with a smile. Was he there that time? Lu Yanqing could not help but recall the unbearable past. Among the people present at that time, there was only one person she did not know. That person's attire was very strange. As the outline of the two roughly matched, Lu Yanqing was slightly surprised. She immediately remembered that Xianxia also had that strange appearance. Obviously, both of them had changed their appearance. In this way, she vaguely remembered that the person at that time was indeed a bit like the current Xuanhuan. "Do you remember?" Jiwu shook her head and smiled. In fact, you don't have to worry at all. Only Brother Crocodile and I know about your matter. We didn't think of telling anyone. I didn't want to tell you about this at first." Everyone pretended not to know anything, but Jiwu looked up at the immortal palace in the sky and said, "Brother Crocodile has not been released until now. I'm afraid he is in trouble. Since Jin Tai went back on his words and thought that I am a pushover, I will go to the immortal palace to find him and punish him. At worst, I will kill him and let him know that I, Jiwu, am not a pushover. Unfortunately." He looked back at Lu Yanqing and said apologetically, "If I knew this would happen, I shouldn't have asked you to come here. Now I have harmed you. But I must do it. Brother Crocodile has done me a great favor. I will fight for Brother Crocodile even if I have to die. When I make my move in the immortal palace, you immediately return to Wuxian. Maybe there is a chance of survival. Although it is slim, it is better than no hope at all. Lu Yanqing, I am really sorry." After Lu Yanqing understood the whole story, she did not have the fear before death. Instead, she seemed to be unusually calm, not as frightened as before. She smiled faintly and said, "I have been implicating others all my life. As long as I can no longer implicate others, so what if I die?" As she smiled, 2 crystal tears fell from the corner of her eyes, leaving 2 wet marks on her cheeks. Her eyes were confused and no one knew what she was thinking of. "Silly woman, are you thinking of him again?" Jiwu pulled up the white palace veil and raised her hand to touch her face. She helped her wipe away the tears, thinking that she was thinking of Yu Qianzhou before she died. Then she smiled and comforted, "It is good for a woman to have a man that she can miss. Speaking of which, I promised to marry Jin Tai this time. I wanted to let Jin Tai force Yu Qianzhou to come on the day of the wedding." Lu Yanqing asked with tears in her eyes, "Why?" "I heard that he is talented and the songs he makes are very good." Jiwu threw away her cold and noble temperament and giggled, "Since I have wronged myself, can't I find someone to vent my anger on? I have to ask him to compose a song for me as a gift for my wedding." Lu Yanqing suddenly smiled through her tears. Just as she was about to say something, she saw Jiwu suddenly look up at the sky. Following her gaze, she saw a stream of light coming directly from the immortal palace and then landing in the courtyard. A skinny old man with white hair tied behind his head glanced at the 2 of them. He was carrying a person in his hand. It was the unconscious Yi Shuejun. Chapter 952. "Brother Yi!" Jiwu exclaimed, but Yi Shuejun did not react at all. Jiwu pointed at the person with sharp eyes. "Ngao, what did you do to him?" The person was Ngao. His status in the immortal palace was not to be underestimated. He was the commander of the law enforcement guard that deterred the entire immortal realm. The immortal palace law enforcement guard was the #1 thug in the immortal realm. His cultivation had reached the middle stage immortal emperor. He never appeared in the outside world easily. Once he suddenly appeared in a sect, the sect would be frightened. His appearance usually meant that a sect was about to be exterminated. It did not mean that other sects were no match for him, but his law enforcement guard had many masters. He controlled a large number of the most powerful masters in the immortal palace. His strength was quite terrifying. He was the primary force of the immortal palace to deter the entire immortal realm. In the immortal realm, wherever there was a person who disobeyed the orders of the immortal palace, they would be there. Ngao was in charge of the law enforcement guard. Naturally, he was one of the most trusted people of immortal Emperor Jin Tai. He was extremely powerful in the immortal realm. Wherever he appeared, it usually represented immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who in the immortal realm was not afraid of him. Ngao looked at Jiwu expressionlessly. His eyes were as cold as lightning. In the entire immortal world, there were very few people who dared to shout in front of him. If it was in the past, there was no need for him to give her face. But now, things were different. After a moment of silence, Ngao finally replied, "Immortal Empress, he insulted the immortal emperor. If it were not for immortal Empress, he would have been dead. This subordinate merely made him shut up." After expressing his respect, he waved his hand at Yi Shuejun, who had fainted on the ground. Yi Shuejun suddenly woke up. "Brother Yi, are you okay?" Jiwu hurriedly went to help Yi Shuejun, who was staggering to get up. She took the opportunity to check if he was injured and suddenly found that Yi Shuejun's cultivation was all sealed. Jiwu immediately patted Yi Shuejun's back a few times, but found that the seal could not be undone. She immediately turned back and said angrily, "Ngao, unseal him. I can't do anything about it. The seal on his body was personally made by the immortal emperor. I can't undo it." Ngao slightly clasped his hands together and said, This subordinate advises immortal empress not to act rashly. You also know the immortal emperor's methods. If you act rashly, you might even hurt him. You. Jiwu was so angry that she didn't know what to say. Immortal queen? Xuanhuan, who had woken up, grabbed her hand and asked sternly, Jiwu, did you agree to that cold-blooded and heartless beast? When Ngao heard this, he immediately warned, Brother Crocodile, leave some leeway in your mouth. Don't make yourself uncomfortable. Xuanhuan turned around and shouted angrily, I don't need you to teach me what to do. Remember this, being Jin Tai's lackey will not end well. I am an example. Sooner or later you will suffer retribution. Brother Crocodile, you don't have to worry about it. You should take care of yourself first. Ngao knew that it was meaningless to continue talking to him, so he left with a cold snort. Brother Crocodile, did they do anything to you? Jiwu supported him and asked. Xuanhuan looked at her with a miserable face. He shook his head and said painfully, You are confused. It's not worth it for me. He naturally understood that the reason why Jiwu agreed was that Jin Tai used him as a hostage. I really have no way out. Jiwu's eyebrows were filled with helplessness. She smiled bitterly and said, What's more, he promised me that he would let you go. This is also the reason why I agreed to his condition. We have no choice but to take a step back and fight for some unknown possibilities. Maybe there will be a chance when the time comes. What will you do then? Share the same bed with him? Xuanhuan grabbed her shoulders and shook her. He roared at the top of his lungs, At most I will die. I can't let him succeed. We have no choice but to make choices that are beyond our control. Jiwu pushed away his hands that were grabbing her shoulders and calmly turned around. She regained her noble temperament and walked towards the colorful crystal palace while saying, It's easy for him to die, but I, Jiwu, am not that easy to bully. I have to make him pay for what he has done. Otherwise it would be too easy for him. As she spoke, her figure disappeared into the crystal palace gate. In the northeastern part of the Eastern Holy Land, thousands of miles away from the Eastern Holy Land, there were many islands of various sizes scattered in the vast ocean, all formed by volcanic eruptions. Among them there were still 9 active volcanic islands. The 9 volcanic islands, which were originally the habitat of seabirds, were now under martial law. No one was allowed to enter or leave without permission. Hong Chi floated in the air with his arms crossed, keeping a vigilant eye on his surroundings. Under his master's orders, he had gathered more than 8,000 alchemy cultivators from the cultivation world on these islands and started concocting pills. The recipe for the Great Limit Break pill had been distributed to everyone, but the names of the immortal herbs and the effects of the recipe were hidden from everyone. So no one knew what pill they were making. The storage bags and other things of the 8,000 alchemy cultivators were temporarily kept safe. There was an adequate supply of immortal herbs, but there were guards around to prevent anyone from hiding any immortal herbs. Apart from these taboos, the other aspects of treatment were not bad. Hong Chi announced to them that after completing the refining task, each person would receive a reward of 100 million upper-grade spirit stones. Those with high quality would be rewarded handsomely. In this way, everyone's enthusiasm was greatly aroused. For most people, 100 million upper spirit stones was indeed not a small number. Guan Weiwu, the alchemy pavilion elder of Fuxian Island, who was known as the #1 alchemy expert in the cultivation world, was also among them. However, his treatment was obviously better than the others. He had a private alchemy room that was not monitored by anyone. There was even a person assigned to be on standby outside. At the same time, he was allowed to stroll around the island at will. Of course, he was not allowed to leave this place. It was unknown whether Hong Chi did it on purpose or not. In any case, he arranged it this way. It was not Yu Qianzhou's idea. In fact, Yu Qianzhou did not expect this at all. However, for Guan Weiwu it was a lot of emotions. Hong Chi had issued an order to the cultivation world from Yu Qianzhou. The old man hid in the alchemy room and wiped his tears a few times. He mistakenly thought that Yu Qianzhou was secretly taking care of him. As a result, the old man, who was already feeling guilty, did not enjoy any privileges at all. It was almost day and night that he desperately refined pills in the alchemy room. Whether it was the quality or the quantity of pills refined, they were shockingly high. In the end, Hong Chi was quite speechless. In the lonely house in the old forest behind the 10,000 demons, Qiu Weiyuan returned the Black Moon Pagoda to his master, Yan Wuchen, with both hands. He left with some doubts in his eyes. He did not know why his master suddenly wanted to take back the Black Moon Pagoda. Yan Wuchen looked at the Black Moon Pagoda in his hand and felt a wave of emotions. He had originally planned to pass the Black Moon Pagoda to Xianhuan. He did not want to pass it to Yan Bugui or Yan Juexing. After all, everyone in the world knew that the Black Moon Pagoda belonged to him. If it was passed to the father and son once it was exposed, it would definitely bring great trouble to the 10,000 demons. However, after a long talk with Yan Juexing recently, he realized that the Black Moon Pagoda was not an ordinary item. It actually had a shocking origin. Moreover, Yan Juexing also made it clear that this item was of great use to him. He would not give it up. If Yan Wuchen did not give it to him, he would have to force it from Xianhuan. The threat in his words was very obvious. Yan Wuchen was furious, but in the end he compromised. There was no other reason. Now that his grandson's cultivation was worlds apart from his, it was not something he could control. In addition, he had some selfish motives. Come out. I know you have been hiding behind and eavesdropping. Yan Wuchen held the Black Moon Pagoda in his hand and snorted. Behind the main door of the main hall, the little disciple of the 10,000 demons, Shouchen, who had been possessed by Yan Juexing, turned around and walked out. He bowed to Yan Wuchen's back and said, "Grandfather, I have brought the item for you. But let me warn you, do not bring trouble to the 10,000 demons. Otherwise I will not let you off even if I become a ghost. Take it." A black flowing light was thrown backward by Yan Wuchen. At such a close distance, Shouchen did not dodge and allowed the Black Moon Pagoda to strike his head. Suddenly, Shouchen's cold eyes shone with a demonic red light. It was as if it was a solid object that was directly projected onto the Black Moon Pagoda. The Black Moon Pagoda suddenly stopped a palm's distance away from Shouchen's forehead. It swayed slightly in the air, and an almost invisible red light flashed on the black moon. Then, the crescent moon-like light moved nimbly inside and outside of the cold Black Moon Pagoda, as if it had a mind of its own, woke up from its deep slumber. Good. The red light in Shouchen's eyes faded. With a face full of joy he shouted, "I did not see wrong. It really is a demon blade." His body suddenly turned into 3 wisps of smoke and went around Yan Wuchen in 3 different directions. The 3 wisps of smoke circled around the courtyard for a while before landing in the center of the courtyard and reappearing. This situation caused a flash of light to flash through Yan Wuchen's eyes. The floating Black Moon Pagoda shot out almost at the same time. After circling around Shouchen in the courtyard for a while, it finally stopped in front of Shouchen and swayed slowly, as if it was trying to identify something. Under Yan Wuchen's gaze, Shouchen bit the tip of his finger and drew a blood talisman in the air. Then he quickly made a series of messy finger seals and shot a spell at the blood talisman floating in the air. The blood talisman immediately shone with a red light and then suddenly shrank into a ball of blood light. As Shouchen slapped at the blood light, he shouted, "Great demon god technique, now is the time to return. Recognize me as your master." The blood-red light flashed and disappeared in an instant, drilling into the floating Black Moon Pagoda. In an instant, the Black Moon Pagoda trembled violently. A low demonic sound came from the trembling blade, as if a demon that had been sleeping at the bottom of the abyss for countless years was about to awaken. Suddenly, a strong blood-red light burst out from the Black Moon Pagoda. The light shot up into the sky, illuminating the entire courtyard and the forest outside in a bright red light. An overwhelming majestic aura rushed out in all directions like an avalanche. Chapter 953. The birds and beasts in the forest fled in panic. Yan Wuchen, who was in the courtyard, could not open his eyes because of the piercing red light. All he could hear was the sounds of walls collapsing and roof tiles flying in all directions. It was a mess. The strong wind that could sweep away all obstacles gradually subsided, and the red light also suddenly disappeared. Yan Wuchen opened his eyes and was shocked. A giant Black Moon Pagoda that was 100 meters tall appeared in front of him. It was so real and it did not look like an illusion. On the crescent moon-like blue blade, there was a red light flowing and flickering. The slightly bulging black blade body was covered with dark and shiny demonic patterns. Black smoke wrapped around the blade, and an incomparably ferocious aura was undoubtedly revealed. Shouchen looked up at it in a daze. He stretched out his arms and slowly floated up, floating in the middle of the crescent. Yan Wuchen suddenly woke up from his shock. He quickly looked around and shouted angrily, "Bastard! What are you trying to do? Do you want to drag the 10,000 demons to eternal damnation?" Shouchen glanced down and waved his hand. The black crescent rotated and shrank rapidly, flashing along with his figure. After landing, the Black Moon Pagoda had returned to its original appearance. However, it was filled with an ancient aura that was not there before. It seemed unusually heavy and oppressive. The entire Black Moon Pagoda was filled with an indescribable spirituality. It circled around Shochin from left to right, east to west, front to back, and seemed to be very excited. The simple and unadorned house had been destroyed by the powerful aura. Yan Wuchen kicked away the collapsed roof beam beside his feet. Shochin flashed through the dilapidated house and directly rushed into the cave at the back. The Black Moon Pagoda floated beside Yan Wuchen. At this moment, hundreds of figures flew over from the direction of the 10,000 demons. The palace master of the 10,000 demons, Bu Yunxiao, landed beside Yan Wuchen. Qiu Weiyuan was also among them. Everyone was obviously alarmed by the commotion just now. Everyone looked around at the mess and could not help but look at each other. They did not know what had happened to cause this place to be like this, but they still bowed to Yan Wuchen. Bu Yunxiao, with his white hair tied up by a black crown, came forward and cupped his fists. Master, what happened? I had some enlightenment just now and could not control myself. I did not want to destroy this place. Yan Wuchen waved his hand at everyone and said indifferently, You are all busy, not an idle person like me. Go back. I have nothing to do here. Everyone was a little shocked when they heard that. Just now they all felt that majestic and unparalleled aura. They didn't expect that it was actually the old sect leader's cultivation. It was a little too shocking. Many people caught a glimpse of the enlarged version of the Black Moon Pagoda and couldn't help but glance at the floating Black Moon Pagoda beside Yan Wuchen. They were all secretly trying to figure something out. Bu Yunxiao looked around and respectfully said, Then we won't disturb Master's cultivation any longer. Disciple will immediately send someone to repair this place after we return. Yan Wuchen nodded slightly in acknowledgement. Everyone bowed and flew back to where they came from. After everyone left, the Black Moon Pagoda beside him rushed into the cave at the back of the mountain with a whoosh. He glanced around and then also rushed into the cave. Man Hu and the others in the cave were like birds startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. They were startled by the commotion outside. Before Shochin could ask anything, Yan Wuchen dashed in and shouted, Bastard! What do you want? Do you want to deliberately cause trouble for my old bones? Shochin smiled faintly and did not take it seriously. He raised his hand and stroked the Black Moon Pagoda floating beside him. He said to himself, The current Yu Qianshou is really powerful. He can actually command the world and become the world's #1 master. Then he looked around and asked, What do you think he is planning by gathering all the alchemy cultivators in the world? Man Hu and the others shook their heads. They had been trapped here for a long time and did not know what Yu Qianshou wanted to do. They could not help but look at Yan Wuchen. If there was anyone here who might know what Yu Qianshou wanted to do, it was Yan Wuchen. Who cares what he is planning? The current Yu Qianshou's power covers the entire cultivation world. He is not someone you can afford to provoke. So behave yourself and don't think about provoking him again, Yan Wuchen shouted sternly. Shochin smiled and did not say anything. He knew that his grandfather was very conflicted. He hoped that he could compete with Yu Qianshou, but he was also afraid that he would not be a match for Yu Qianshou. In the end, he would not only harm himself but also implicate the 10,000 demons. After Yan Wuchen left, Shochin waved his sleeve and put away the Black Moon Pagoda. He then strode outside. The others felt that something was wrong. Yan Bugui shouted from behind, what are you going to do? Shochin stopped in his tracks and turned to look at the few of them. He said confidently, With my current cultivation and the Devil Blade, I can go anywhere in the world. Moreover, I can't just watch as Yu Qianshou grows stronger. The meaning of his words was very clear. He wanted to settle the score with Yu Qianshou. Man Hu immediately said anxiously, Junior brother, didn't you say that with your current cultivation, you can open the passage to the demon world once you get the Devil Blade? Why don't you open the passage to the demon world first and get strong reinforcements before annihilating Yu Qianshou and all his forces? Isn't that appropriate? He had suffered losses at the hands of Yu Qianshou time and time again. Now he was afraid of Yu Qianshou. Although Yan Zhuixing's cultivation had reached the soul formation final stage, he was still afraid of his master Bing Qingzi. Open the passage to the demon world? Shochin's eyes flashed fiercely. Do you really think that the people in the demon world will be grateful to us after we open the passage to the demon world? I'm afraid we are no different from ants in their eyes. It's not realistic to expect others to take revenge for us. I have to settle the grudge between me and Yu Qianshou with my own hands. Otherwise, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. As for opening the demon world, we have to wait until we have enough power in the human world. That's why we have to get rid of Yu Qianshou, who is a stumbling block in the human world. Then the devil realm, the immortal realm, and the underworld. I want to trample them all underfoot. I want to be the eternal ruler of the three realms. As soon as he said those ambitious words, everyone was dumbfounded. As his father, Yen Bugui, swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Be careful. Haste makes waste. Father, don't worry. I won't make the same mistake as last time. Shochin gritted his teeth. I really underestimated that guy's ruthlessness last time. This time I will be careful. I'll grab his weakness and kill him in one fell swoop. The last time he was talking about was the time when he held Lu Yanqing and the others hostage in the Spirit Fang Valley. Who knew that Yu Qianshou did not care about the lives of Lu Yanqing and the others, and still tried to kill him, to the point that his soul almost flew away. They knew him too well. They knew that once he made a decision, there was no point in trying to persuade him. Yen Bugui sighed. Find a chance to see your mother and sister. See if they're doing well. I'm sure they've been worried about us. Shochin paused and seemed to recall something. After a long silence, he said slowly, after we leave this place, I'll go to the 100 Flowers Palace. You guys wait here. I believe it won't be long before we don't have to hide anymore. With that, he turned around and left. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked out of the cave, he saw Yen Wuqian slowly turning around. The grandfather and grandson looked at each other silently. Finally, it was Shochin who broke the silence. Grandfather. I've made up my mind. Don't stop me. I knew you wouldn't give up. Yen Wuqian shook his head and sighed. Listen to me. Endure the humiliation and increase your cultivation. It's never too late to take revenge. My cultivation has reached this stage. If I want to break through again, it's useless to just cultivate. I need to combine movement and stillness, Shochin explained. Sigh. I can't stop you either. But remember, don't involve the 10,000 demons until the outcome is decided. The 10,000 demons only owe us a favor. They don't owe us anything. Even if you fail, maybe the 10,000 demons can be your escape route. Yen Wuqian didn't look at him anymore. He waved his hand and gestured for him to leave. Shochin bowed. Then he turned into a shadow and shot into the clouds, flying away quickly. In the deep forest in the distance, Qiu Weiyuan focused his vision and saw everything. When he saw Shochin leaving at an unimaginable speed, his expression changed drastically. Not long after Shochin flew out of the mountain range where the 10,000 demons were entrenched, he suddenly stopped in the air and turned around to look down. No one knew what he had inadvertently discovered, but he quickly flew downwards and directly scuttled into the dense forest. He blocked in front of a woodcutter and said indifferently, "Who are you? Why are you staring at me?" The woodcutter had a short beard. Although he was dressed like a woodcutter, he didn't have any woodcutter's tools. In fact, his tools had already been thrown a few kilometers away. He chuckled and said, "Young master, why do you say that?" Shochin looked around and sneered. "You're hopelessly stupid. You're full of flaws. Do you think there's a need to hide? You don't look like someone from the 10,000 demons." After sizing up the woodcutter, he stared at the woodcutter's face. He suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, "I think I've seen you somewhere before. Tell me honestly, who are you? Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." The woodcutter's expression changed slightly. Without another word, he quickly fled into the distance. However, before he could get far, he saw a figure flash in front of him. 2 beams of demonic red light pierced his mind, and he immediately fell unconscious. "You dare to show off in front of me with just this bit of ability?" Shochin sneered. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" The woodcutter said with a dazed expression, "My name is Hai Wei. I've been ordered to keep watch here." Hai Wei. Shochin frowned slightly and racked his brains. Suddenly, his gaze turned cold and his face darkened. "No wonder you look familiar. We've met in cornucopia before. You're one of the 4 subordinates that Yu Qianshou took in outside cornucopia's spring slumber loft. Why are you keeping watch here? Tell me everything in detail." Chapter 954. After listening to Hai Wei's story, Shochin suddenly laughed hysterically and said, "Yu Qianshou, oh Yu Qianshou. Yu Qianshou, you really don't give up on killing me. You're actually on guard against me to such an extent. Are you afraid of me? Are you afraid of me?" Ah. It turned out that during the battle at Lingfang Valley, Yan Zhuixing's death had provoked Yu Qianshou's deep fear. However, after using all his forces to search the entire cultivation world, he couldn't find any traces of Yan Zhuixing at all. Yu Qianshou couldn't figure out whether Yan Zhuixing was dead or not because the demonic technique was too evil. Coupled with the disappearance of Man Hu and the others from Snowy Mountain, Yu Qianshou immediately felt a huge knot in his heart. Yu Qianqiu had a strong feeling that this matter was definitely not over, but he really couldn't find Yan Zhuixing. He couldn't give up eating for fear of choking and do nothing for Yan Zhuixing. In the end, after repeatedly thinking about it, he came to a conclusion. Yan Zhuixing was already hated by everyone in the cultivation world. Most people wouldn't dare to help him unless they wanted to die. As a result, 10,000 demons and Baihua Palace immediately became his main suspects. This was because Yan Wuchen of 10,000 demons was Yan Zhuixing's grandfather, and Baihua Fairy of Baihua Palace was Yan Zhuixing's mother. In the entire cultivation world, if there were people who would dare to risk their lives to help Yan Zhuixing, it would definitely be these two. After thinking about it, in order not to make too much noise and alert the enemy, Yu Qianqiu sent out his more reliable confidants and had Hai Wei and Imo Xiaojun keep watch outside of 10,000 demons. They would keep an eye on the back of the mountain where Yan Wuchen lived. If they found any suspicious people or things, the two of them would immediately inform the Hong Gang and Qing Gang. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun would immediately use all their power to thoroughly investigate the clues. As long as there was a little evidence that the 10,000 demons were related to Yan Zhuixing, Yu Qianqiu would mercilessly launch a devastating attack on the 10,000 demons. He would find Yan Zhuixing even if he had to scrape the ground. Similarly, Yu Qianqiu didn't let the Flower Palace off either, and he sent Amano and Li Qiuxiang to monitor them in secret. Not many people knew about this. Other than Yu Qianqiu, there were only these four people, Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun. Originally, Yu Qianqiu wanted to directly destroy the 10,000 demons and the Flower Palace so that Yan Zhuixing would have nowhere to hide. However, considering that the demonic art was too strange, he wasn't very confident that he would be able to find Yan Zhuixing, so he left these two sects as bait. He didn't believe that Yan Zhuixing could rise again without any support, so he had to find a trustworthy foothold. It could be said that leaving these two sects was to not waste a lot of manpower and resources to search blindly. This kind of setup had to be said to be far-sighted, and he had accidentally encountered it. Yan Zhuixing didn't even know what was going on. He really resurrected with Yan Wuchen of the 10,000 demons. However, things were always unpredictable. Hai Wei didn't think that Yan Zhuixing's cultivation level had already reached the soul formation late stage. He was immediately discovered by Yan Zhuixing as soon as he revealed a bit of information. Yan Zhuixing immediately figured out the ins and outs of the matter with the power of his magic eye. "You're saying that there are two more people watching the Flower Palace?" Shouchen asked in a deep voice. "Yes." Hai Wei replied respectfully. Shouchen immediately gritted his teeth. While he hated them, he couldn't help but admire Yu Qianqiu. He had come out this time to go to the Flower Palace, but he didn't expect that he had already fallen into Yu Qianqiu's trap. This guy was really terrifying. If he didn't get rid of him as soon as possible, it would be a huge problem. If he hadn't accidentally discovered Hai Wei, he would definitely have rashly barged into the Flower Palace because he had changed his appearance. "Where's the other guy who's watching over the 10,000 demons with you?" Shouchen shouted. Hai Wei pointed into the distance and said, "Young Lord Imo is over there. He and I are each watching an area that people rarely pass by." Yu Qianqiu said that most people who do sneaky things don't dare to do it openly. They can only sneakily take small paths. Anyone that we meet is suspicious. Don't let any of them go. We have to investigate them thoroughly. That B** starred is talking about himself, right? Shouchen was furious. He didn't expect that he would be angered by Yu Qianqiu before he even saw Yu Qianqiu. He suddenly had a thought that he might have a bad start again. He immediately became vigilant. He felt that this guy was too scary. He had to be more careful this time. After calming himself down, he asked indifferently, "Do you know where Yu Qianqiu is now?" "I don't know. I haven't seen him for a long time. If anything happens, I directly inform the people from the Green Gang and Hong Gang," Hai Wei replied. The Green Gang and Hong Gang are Yu Qianqiu's lackeys." Shouchen suddenly looked into the distance and sneered. "Yu Qianqiu, it's time for us to have a showdown. What you've given me, I'll give it back to you 10 times, 100 times more. Continue to monitor here. Pretend that you've never seen me." After saying this to Hai Wei, he quickly flew toward the place where Imo Xiaojun was hiding. Now that he had a rough idea of his target, he could easily lure Imo Xiaojun out with his cultivation. After taking control of Shouchen made some inquiries, and the information he obtained was similar to what Hai Wei had said. Regarding Yu Qianqiu, the two only knew some things that happened in Cornucopia, and they were all unimportant things which made Shouchen very depressed. In the back mountain of the 100 Flowers Valley, Tianyi flew to a remote place. His palms formed a trumpet and made a cuckoo-cuckoo sound. There was movement in the ancient trees not far away. Li Qiuxiang flew over and looked at Tianyi strangely. Why are you here now? What's the matter? Your man misses you. Can't I come over to see you? It was not Tianyi's voice. Tianyi did not speak. The voice came from behind. Li Qiuxiang was shocked. She suddenly turned around, but what she saw were two demonic red lights that pierced her heart. In the Hundred Flowers Valley, Shouchen strolled toward the mountain gate of the Hundred Flowers Palace. He looked around and could not help but sigh. Previously he was like a rat on the street that everyone wanted to beat up. He did not dare to return even if he had a home. This time, if he had not changed his appearance, it would probably be inconvenient for him to return. Thinking that all of this was caused by Yu Qianqiu, he could not help but grit his teeth. Halt. The two disciples guarding the Hundred Flowers Palace flashed out. They pushed their palms at Shouchen and shouted, "This place is not for trespassing. Report if there's anything. If there's nothing, leave immediately." Shouchen was stunned. Only then did he remember that he was no longer the young palace master who could enter and leave the Hundred Flowers Palace at will. However, since he dared to come so brazenly, he naturally prepared an excuse. He cupped his hands and said, "I'm a serving disciple under consecrated Yen of the 10,000 demons. This time, I'm here to visit the Hundred Flowers Palace Master under the orders of the ancestral master. I have something to tell you. Please report it." After the Yen clan's father and son caused a ruckus all those years ago, supporting Immortal Island had seized the opportunity to eliminate all the disciples related to the Myriad Devil Palace. It could be said that supporting Immortal Island had seized the opportunity to take control of the Flower Palace. Hearing that it was a disciple of the 10,000 demons, the disciples guarding the gate shouted angrily, "Our palace master does not want to see anyone from the 10,000 demons." Shouchen's expression changed. With his cultivation he could easily barge into the Hundred Flowers Palace, but he was afraid that there would be scouts sent by Yu Qianqiu in the surroundings. He was afraid that he would attract unnecessary trouble, so he came openly, but he still ran into trouble. At that moment someone called out from inside, "Let him in." The voice was as pleasant as an oriole. Shouchen looked up and his expression eased a lot. It was none other than his younger sister, xianxia. Actually, Bai Hua Fairy and her daughter did not want to see anyone from the 10,000 demons, otherwise the supporting Immortals Island would not have been able to control the Hundred Flowers Palace so easily. However, xianxia, who happened to pass by, recognized the Shouchen. She knew that he was someone who had been serving Grandpa for a long time and had never seen the 10,000 demons. Since he suddenly appeared here, there must be something important, so she let him in. Xianxia curiously looked at the approaching Shouchen and asked, "Shouchen, why are you here instead of staying by Grandpa's side?" "Greetings, young miss." Shouchen reluctantly bowed and said, "Founding Master told me to pass a message to the Bai Hua Palace Master." Xianxia didn't think much of it and nodded. "Then come with me." She then led Shouchen into the Hundred Flowers Palace. Inside the Hundred Flowers Palace, the famous beauty of China's cultivation world already had some white hair on her temples, causing Shouchen, who was standing below, to feel a bit worried and forgot to bow. Bai Hua Fairy's elegance didn't diminish as she sat on the highest seat in the hall, observing Shouchen below and frowned. "If you have something to say, then say it." Shouchen regained his senses, looked at the maids around him, then knelt down and kowtowed. "This junior greets the palace master." Greets the palace master. Seeing him bowing so respectfully, Bai Hua Fairy was a bit surprised, but after a bit of hesitation, her expression became a bit more friendly as she raised her hand. "No need to be so polite, just say it." Shouchen looked up. "This junior brings a private message," but he sent his voice. "Palace master, please leave. Founding master told me to bring news of the young palace master." Hearing that, Bai Hua Fairy's expression changed, but quickly returned to normal, glanced around and waved her hand. "All of you leave. Xixia, you also leave." Xianxia was a bit surprised but still obediently left with the maids. When only the two of them were left in the hall, Bai Hua Fairy suddenly stood up, quickly set up a soundproof barrier around the hall and asked with excitement, "Just now, who did you say you brought news of?" Although she understood what he said, she still didn't believe it, because she had always thought that her son was killed by Yu Qianqiu, but now there's news of her son, so how could she not be excited? Shouchen was also a bit excited. After kowtowing 3 times, he looked up at Bai Hua Fairy and spoke with a choked voice. "Your son has been unfilial. I've made mother worry." Hearing that, Bai Hua Fairy's face paled as she stared at the kneeling person, stuttering, You, what did you call me?" Chapter 955. Your son was heavily injured after a fierce battle with that traitor named you in Spirit Fang Valley. I almost lost my life. Luckily Grandpa took me in and saved my life. Shou Chen immediately knelt down and told his mother the gist of what happened. He was very confident in his mother, not worried that Bai Hua Fairy would leak the secret. Then he said, "Before I left, Father specifically told me to come and see if mother and sister are doing well. You?" Bai Hua Fairy felt like she was struck by lightning, stunned on the spot, still in disbelief. You said you're Xing. No, that's impossible. You can change your appearance but your height." The body possession thing was too strange, even Yan Zhuixing himself was shocked by it, so he didn't tell Bai Hua Fairy about it. Shou Chen stood up straight. "Your son has practiced a divine martial art, changing my appearance is nothing to me, just wait for me to restore my appearance for mother to see." Saying so, he clapped his hands together, putting his index and middle fingers together in between his eyebrows, shouting, "Appearance is born from the heart, return my true body." A wave of black killing intent came out from his body, enveloping his entire body. A series of cracking sounds could be heard. When the black fiend was absorbed back into his body, Yan Zhuixing's original appearance was revealed in the hall, wearing a smaller set of clothes. Bai Hua Fairy had never seen such a strange thing before, so shocked that she couldn't say anything. After a while she slowly walked down from the high seat, staring at Yan Zhuixing and asked, "Are you really my Xing? You really didn't die? I remember when I first started cultivating, Mother brought me to the rooftop to look at the stars in the night sky. You said that the Xing in my name is the same as the stars in the sky, they both shine. I then told Mother that when I grow up I will take down the brightest star in the sky and give it to Mother. I remember how happy Mother was at the time." Yan Zhuixing smiled and said, "This was something that happened a very very long time ago, only the two of them knew." In an instant, Bai Hua Fairy's eyes became misty as she rushed forward and embraced Yan Zhuixing, speaking emotionally, "You really are my Xing. You really aren't dead. Mother, don't worry. That traitor surnamed you won't be able to kill me." Yan Zhuixing gritted his teeth and said, "I came back this time to settle the score with him. As long as I get rid of him, our family can reunite." Bai Hua Fairy suddenly pushed him away, panicking, "You still want to find Yu Qianqiu?" No, the current Yu Qianqiu was no longer the same as before. His power was far too great, and even the hundreds of demigod stage lords from the various nations were under his command. "You can't beat him. Isn't it better to hide your identity? I don't ask for a family reunion, I only ask that you two be safe. Mother, you don't have to worry. Your son is no longer the same as before. If I didn't have absolute confidence in winning, why would I come out to die in vain?" Yan Zhuixing coldly laughed. "He made it impossible for our family to reunite. The pain he made me suffer, I will return it to him 1,000 times over. How can I let him continue to be so arrogant in the cultivation world? If I don't get my revenge, I'm not a man. No, we won't get our revenge. Our family didn't lose anything anyway, we're all alive and well." Bai Hua Fairy grabbed Yan Zhuixing's arm and said, "I've heard about you practicing demonic arts. As soon as you show your face in the cultivation world, you'll be surrounded and attacked by the entire cultivation world. I can't even imagine that. Mother, I really don't want to suffer the pain of losing my son anymore." Yan Zhuixing scowled. "Surrounded and attacked? With just them? They're nothing but a bunch of fence-sitters, they'll listen to whoever's fist is stronger. As long as I kill that traitor surnamed you, who else would dare to come and die? No, even if you don't think for yourself, you have to think for your little sister." Bai Hua Fairy didn't let him off the hook. "Little sister? What does this have to do with her?" Yan Zhuixing scowled. Bai Hua Fairy powerlessly shook her head. "When Yu Qianqiu was still cultivating on Fuxian Island, he had already met your little sister. The two of them were originally in love with each other, the only difference was that they were going to marry each other. But then because of the grudge between you and Yu Qianqiu, your little sister's heart was broken. When she found out that you were killed by Yu Qianqiu, your little sister would often cry in secret. The two of you kept fighting, the one who was hurt the most was your little sister. One was her own brother, the other was someone she liked. What would your little sister do? I can tell that your little sister still likes him. Even if you can win against Yu Qianqiu, what would your little sister do after you kill Yu Qianqiu? Do you want her to wash her face with tears every day?" Yan Zhuixing was stunned. Not even in his dreams could he imagine that Yu Qianqiu would seduce his little sister. In fact, ever since Yu Qianqiu cut off his love with the brilliant sword, he didn't put this matter to heart. He didn't know that the female lead of the story would be so infatuated that the story would become so melodramatic. If he had to blame something, he could only blame his dirty hands at the time. He shouldn't have touched xianxia so carelessly. For some women, as long as you don't cross the line, there won't be much of a problem, but once you cross a certain line, it'll be very troublesome. Coincidentally, xianxia was this kind of woman, deeply rooted in love. Bastard, despicable. Yan Zhuixing was so angry that his body trembled. He didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to make a move behind his back and take advantage of him first. He was so angry that his eyes faintly emitted red light. He gritted his teeth and said, "Mother, don't be naive. Maybe sister has feelings for him, but that guy is not a good person. Even if I let him go, he won't let me go. You probably don't know that. He's already placed people around by Hua Palace. As soon as I show up, he'll kill me. I guarantee that no matter who pleads for me, he won't let me go." Saying so, he clasped his hands together and shouted, "Appearance comes from the heart, borrow my avatar." A black fiend appeared and covered his entire body, followed by the sound of bones cracking. When the black fiend retracted, he returned to his usual appearance, turned around and left. Bai Hua Fairy hurriedly grabbed him again. "What are you trying to do? Can't even I talk to you?" Unexpectedly, a gust of wind pushed her back a few steps. Yan Zhuixing suddenly turned around. "That animal dared to play with my little sister's feelings. I definitely won't let him go. I'll give him a taste of his own medicine. Just wait until I've also played with his woman, then I'll let him have a taste of what it's like. Don't worry, mother, it's better to get the pain over with. After I kill him, as time passes, my little sister will naturally walk out of the shadow. Do you want your little sister to hate you for the rest of her life?" Bai Hua Fairy shouted. "Hating me for the rest of my life is better than falling in love with someone you shouldn't love and being sad for an outsider." Yan Zhuixing casually formed a hand seal, freezing Bai Hua Fairy in place, only regaining her senses after Yan Zhuixing left about a minute later. After the relationship between the four major clans and Bai Changchun was exposed, their status in the cultivation world had suddenly increased. Logically speaking, the Bai clan of the four major clans had the greatest honor, but in fact, the Wu clan was in the limelight. The reason for this was none other than the fact that Wu family has a daughter named Wu Lixue, the woman of the current Yao Gui realm's torture envoy, the strongest expert in the world. This was something that Yu Qianqiu had personally admitted. Who in the world didn't know about it? Nowadays, the entire cultivation world no longer has any national boundaries. Everyone lived in harmony with each other. Therefore, the current Wu clan's Hat Island was extraordinarily bustling. Cultivators from all over the world frequently visited this place, and the Wu clan had become the most prosperous, lively and largest auction venue in the entire cultivation world. Wealth was rolling in, and it could be said that they had earned a lot of money. However, it was useless even if others were jealous. No one dared to do anything to Wu family. Who told Wu family to have a daughter named Wu Lixue, and Wu Lixue was Yu Qianqiu's woman? Who in the world would dare to touch Wu family? Gulu House was a restaurant opened by Wu family on Hat Island, as well as the largest and best restaurant on Hat Island. Shouchen changed out of the myriad demon's palace's attire and ordered a table of food and wine. He sat alone by the window and slowly drank his wine. He looked at the bustling scene of people coming and going on the streets below, and his expression was dark and gloomy. Everything that happened that year felt like it happened just yesterday. It was here that he first met Wu Lixue, the first woman in his life who could make his heart beat faster. He didn't know why he was attracted to Wu Lixue. In fact, he had seen many women who were more beautiful than Wu Lixue, but he had never felt the way he did when he saw Wu Lixue. He didn't know what he liked about Wu Lixue. Perhaps it was her innocent smile that could make her big eyes look like crescent moons, or her lively cuteness, or even her stupid words. In short, everything about her had an astonishing allure to him. Unfortunately, Wu Lixue came with Yu Qianqiu, who he hated to the bone. However, at that time he had a good relationship with him and they called each other brothers. Perhaps they could have been very good friends. Later, some accidents happened and Wu Lixue was violated by the son of the Daluo sect master. Logically speaking, since he liked Wu Lixue, he should have stepped forward bravely. However, he was filled with misgivings at the time. The Daluo sect was truly powerful at the time, and he was a man with great ambitions. How could he ruin his plans by offending the Daluo sect for the sake of a woman? Even now, he still felt a dull ache in his heart when he thought about it. He had spent countless nights vexed over it. If the situation had happened now, he would definitely have stepped forward bravely to save the damsel in distress, and he would definitely have won Wu Lixue's favor. However, there were no ifs for what had already happened. At that time he was the young palace master of the 100 Flowers Palace, and he didn't dare to do it, but that little disciple of Fuxian Island did it instead. He simply threw caution to the wind and publicly announced that Wu Lixue was his woman. He even beat up the son of the Daluo sect master for Wu Lixue, and because of that he formed a deep grudge with the Daluo sect. However, with effort comes reward, and Yu Qianqiu really captured the heart of the beauty. Wu Lixue had a good impression of him on the spot, and he could see it from the shy look in Wu Lixue's eyes when she looked at Yu Qianqiu at that time. Her shy look cut into his heart like a knife, and he wished that he could go back in time and let the situation repeat itself. He would definitely stand up for Yu Qianqiu and stand up for her. However, a missed opportunity was a missed opportunity, and it was impossible to go back in time. So what if his heart ached? He didn't do anything wrong at that time because he was a person with great ambitions. No matter what, his actions were more rational than Yu Qianqiu's. Chapter 956. Later on, Yu Qianqiu was expelled from the Fuxian Island because he had made too many troubles. However, it was inconceivable that he had become the disciple of Bai Changchun, the torture envoy of the demon ghost region, who was the #1 expert in the world. This traitor was really lucky. However, his luck was not bad either. He had cultivated the treasure book left by the demonic god. What happened later was known by everyone in the world. He and Yu Qianqiu had become mortal enemies. However, he had failed several times when they fought against each other. However, this was not what made his heart ache the most. What made his heart ache was that the two of them had turned the act into reality. Wu Lixue had truly become Yu Qianqiu's woman. Even so, when he fought against Yu Qianqiu, he had never thought of hurting her. But that traitor Yu Qianqiu had actually made a move against his younger sister. This was truly unbearable. Since he couldn't obtain her, then he, Yu Qianqiu, shouldn't even think about obtaining her. Lady Wu. Lady Wu. Madame Yu. The flattering noises on the street made Shouchen come back to himself. Shouchen's pupils shrank suddenly. He looked at the crowd on the street. 4 or 5 young ladies in the Wu clan's clothes were chattering and protecting a lady who had a pet crow on her shoulder. That lady was Wu Lixue. A group of young ladies were high-spirited. Because of Wu Lixue, they enjoyed the respectful gazes of the people on both sides and walked into the Gulu house. The crowd on the street became bustling again. Many ladies from different sects looked back at the Gulu house enviously from time to time. Some of them stopped to look at the Gulu house and didn't want to leave. Their facial expressions kept changing as if they were imagining something. Maybe they were imagining how great it would be if they were Yu Qianqiu's woman. Lady Wu, you are here. Amidst the waiter's compliments, a series of footsteps came up the stairs. 5 to 6 women appeared in Shouchen's sight. Wu Lixue was still the same as before. Time had not left any traces on her face, but there seemed to be a hint of sadness between her brows. She no longer had the innocent smile she used to have. This made Shouchen's heart clench slightly. It seemed like she did not have a good life with Yu Qianqiu. Wu Lixue's clear eyes glanced at Shouchen, but she didn't pay much attention to him. Then, under the guidance of the waiter, the group of ladies entered the private room facing the river. After the waiter came out, the girls sitting around the table immediately chattered. Then the door closed and Wu Lixue, who was sitting in the middle, disappeared behind the door. However, with Shouchen's hearing, he could tell that the girls were talking about Wu Lixue. Yu Qianqiu's name kept popping up. Shouchen raised the wine glass to his lips, forgetting to drink. He looked at the closed door absent-mindedly. Later, when the waiter served the dishes, the door closed several times and he saw Wu Lixue several times. Wu Lixue seemed to sense that someone was looking at her. She also looked curiously at him, who was sitting alone by the window outside. She felt like they had met before, but at the same time she didn't know him. The crow on Wu Lixue's shoulder had its eyes closed most of the time. It would open occasionally, but it seemed to be dozing off most of the time. It didn't leave Wu Lixue's shoulder at all. After the dishes and wine were served, the door to the private room was gently closed by the waiter. It didn't open for a long time, and only the chattering could be heard from inside. Shouchen let out a soft sigh and drank the wine he had raised to his lips. When he refilled his wine, he realized that the wine in the flask had already been emptied. He called for the waiter to bring a few flasks of wine. When the waiter came down with the wine, he shook his head. He thought that this was another person drowning his sorrows in wine. This kind of person was common. Sister Lixue, Yu Qianqiu hasn't come to see you for so many years. What has he been doing? I don't know either. Sister Lixue, if Yu Qianqiu comes next time, you must bring us to see him. The #1 expert in the world. I heard that he's very powerful. So many people are afraid of him. Shouchen, who was drinking alone, suddenly froze. He suddenly turned to look at the closed door and narrowed his eyes. This conversation immediately attracted his attention. Immediately inside the private room, A group of ladies who acted like reserved ladies in front of outsiders had already revealed their true colors. They toasted each other and drank happily. Their aura wasn't any weaker than that of the men. Wu Lishua's innocent nature also broke out when she was in the mood to drink. The trace of sadness between her eyebrows turned into high spirits. She rolled up the sleeves of her hands, revealing a pair of white and tender arms that were like pink lotus roots. She happily joined the ranks of the people who were pouring wine into each other's mouths. It could be seen that this group of ladies had done such crazy things behind the backs of their elders. However, the crow suffered. It didn't seem to have a good impression of the wine. It jumped on Wu Lishua's shoulder and used its butt to express its protest to everyone. Miss Wu Lishua, do you want to know why Yu Qianqiu hasn't come to see you for so many years? Do you want to know where Yu Qianqiu is right now? Do you want to know what he's doing now? I'm Yu Qianqiu's friend. I just came back from Yu Qianqiu's place. If you want to know anything about Yu Qianqiu, I'll stay in the forest in the west for a short while before I leave. Remember, Yu Qianqiu is currently doing something important. It's not convenient for too many people to know about it. It's best if you come alone quietly and don't alarm others. I won't wait for you if you're late. The sudden sound transmission caused Wu Lishua, who was having a great time, to be startled. Someone immediately asked, Sister Lishua, what's wrong? Nothing. Wu Lishua shook her head. However, she quickly left the banquet and opened the door. She saw that the table facing the window was empty, but the person sitting by the window was gone. Could it be that he was the one who sent the voice transmission just now? Wu Lishua muttered to herself. She silently closed the door and sat back at the banquet. She frowned and pondered. A few of her drinking friends noticed her abnormality and asked, What's wrong? Wu Lishua glanced at the few of them and muttered, I want to go out into the forest alone, but I don't want anyone to recognize me. Does anyone have any ideas? The women looked at each other with understanding expressions. As Yu Qianqiu hadn't come to see Wu Lishua for a long time, Wu Lishua was often depressed. Because of this, the family sent them to think of ways to accompany Wu Lishua. The women mistakenly thought that Wu Lishua wanted to go out alone to relax. They didn't think much of it. You're going out alone. I'm afraid it's not safe. It's better for us to accompany you. Someone voiced out their concerns. Subsequently, someone else added, That's right. If something were to happen to you, it might provoke Yu Qianqiu to come and punish us. With your famous temper, our Wu clan wouldn't be able to bear it. Wu Lishua had a naive temperament, but she wasn't a fool. She knew what everyone was worried about. Because of Yu Qianqiu, the Wu clan's glorious future was all pinned on her. The entire Wu clan treated her like a pearl in their palm and wouldn't let her take any risks. However, after thinking about it, she felt that nothing would happen. It was also because of Yu Qianqiu. Who in the world would dare to touch her? She paused for a moment and said, I can't think of anyone who would harm me, and I don't think anyone would dare to do so. I'm just going to take a walk around the Wu clan and we'll be back soon. Nothing will happen. The women looked at each other and felt that it was true. With Yu Qianqiu's current power and cultivation, would anyone dare to touch Wu Lishua? No one would dare to do so even if they had 100 guts. But if the clan knows that we let you go out alone, all of us will be punished. Someone whispered, but from the tone, it could be heard that they were already relieved. It doesn't matter. I will go out for a walk quietly and we'll be back soon. No one will find out. Even if someone finds out and the clan punishes all of you, I will definitely come forward and plead for leniency for all of you. I guarantee that nothing will happen to all of you. Wu Lishua confidently patted her big chest like a man. Her naive temperament was undoubtedly revealed. The women were originally in a dilemma. They didn't dare to go against the clan's instructions, but they also didn't want to make Wu Lishua unhappy. Because all the clans had secretly instructed them to please Wu Lishua so that they could obtain Wu Lishua's support in the clan's internal struggle for power. This was a crucial matter. With Wu Lishua's guarantee, everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. No one doubted Wu Lishua's powerful influence in the Wu clan. As long as Wu Lishua came forward to plead for leniency, even the clan head and clan elders would have to give face. Most importantly, the women were extremely confident that no one in the world would dare to touch a single hair of Wu Lishua. In a situation where nothing happened, they could still make Wu Lishua happy. Why wouldn't they do it? But how can we not let others recognize you? A woman looked at everyone and asked, Does anyone know how to disguise themselves? The women shook their heads. Then, someone seemed to think of something and clapped her hands. She took out a white gauze hat from her storage bag and smiled. Just wear this to cover your face. Thank you. Wu Lishua's eyes lit up. Her naive and playful personality came out again. After receiving it, she immediately put it on her head and asked, "How is it? How is it? Can you recognize me?" The women's eyes focused on her impressive figure. They realized that although they couldn't see her face, her figure could be recognized by those who had seen her before. Wu Lishue followed everyone's gaze and looked at herself. She immediately pouted and understood. "I have a way." Another person happily clapped his hands and took out a black female shawl robe from his storage pouch. He handed it over and said, "You just need to wear this. With a veil on your head, no one will be able to recognize you." Wu Lishue took it and immediately tried it on. The women cheered after seeing it and confirmed that it worked. No one would be able to recognize her. However, there was still a slightly older person who was worried. "Younger sister Lishue, don't take too long. Go and come back quickly." Chapter 957. Wu Lishue immediately extended a finger from her black robe and wagged it playfully. "Just 2 hours. I will be back within 2 hours. Don't open the door and let others see that I'm not here. Continue to talk and eat. No one will know that I'm not here." Finishing her words, she chuckled and leaped out from the window by the river. "Hurry up and come back." The slightly older woman quickly exhorted again. Seeing that Wu Lishue had disappeared, she sat down and shook her head with a sigh. That man of hers. I remember that when he first met Lishue and came to the Wu clan, many people in the Wu clan looked down on him. In the end, every time he appeared in the Wu clan, we realized that his cultivation was getting higher and his authority was getting heavier. Now, his cultivation is #1 in the world and his authority is monstrous. But he seems to be a little too busy. I don't know if Lishue is fortunate or unfortunate to be his woman. Anyway, it's no different from not having a man. Once this was said, someone immediately agreed. That's right. Actually, to us women, being able to be with our man every day isn't necessarily a blissful thing. For those who fight and kill outside all day long, so what if they obtain the entire world? Xue is a very good example. That Yu Qianzhou doesn't even have time to care about her. But in the eyes of many people in the Wu clan, whether Xue is happy or not is secondary. It's fine as long as Xue can be Yu Qianzhou's woman in name. After a sigh, the woman turned and asked the person who spoke earlier, "If Yu Qianzhou is your man or if you are Xue would you be happy?" That person's eyes immediately lit up. "I want to. Unfortunately, it's impossible." Weren't you feeling sorry for Xue just now and saying that it's meaningless for such a man to fight and kill outside all day long? Why are you thinking about it now? Pity is pity and meaningless is meaningless. But if she finds a useless man who stays by her side all day long, wouldn't it be even more meaningless? Maybe one day when she gets bullied by him, she won't even be able to stand up for him. That's why I would rather feel empty and lonely when I'm alone in my room, as long as I can enjoy everyone's envious gazes when I come out. Look at Xue. Everyone in the world fawns over her. Whatever she wants, someone will immediately think of a way to get it for her. I'm so envious of her. Last, you're thinking of love. When Xue comes back later, you can discuss with her and see if you can get Yu Qianzhou to accept you as his concubine. You're the concubine of the #1 expert in the world? Hee hee. The group of women burst into laughter, and the room was instantly filled with laughter and scolding. Wu Lishue, who was wearing a gauze hat and a black robe, quietly flew over the old forest on the west side of Hat Island. She looked around behind the gauze curtain but didn't see anyone. She immediately shouted, "I'm here. Is anyone here?" The mountain range rose and fell, and the forest valley was secluded. Not even the sound of birds could be heard. The surroundings were too quiet, so quiet that it made people feel a little apprehensive. Especially the swaying shadows in the shade of the trees, it gave people an indescribable feeling of strangeness. She shouted, but no one answered. Wu Lishue muttered in her heart, could it be that he left because he didn't want to wait? So she shouted again, "I'm here. Is anyone here?" She didn't know that Shouchen, who was not far away, was looking at her. He was just scared by Wu Lishue's strange clothes. After being beaten by Yu Qianzhou several times, he became more vigilant. He was worried that it might be a trap. After confirming that the person was indeed Wu Lishue, he carefully looked around. Seeing that there was no one else, he let out a sigh of relief and dashed out. Wu Lishue didn't hear any response and no one came out, so he guessed that the man might have left. He looked around and was about to leave. Suddenly, he saw a man standing on a treetop not far away from him. It was the man who had been drinking in the Gulu house. She saw that the person looked at her and asked, "Are you Miss Wu Lishue?" Wu Lishua pulled the gauze curtain that covered her face up to her hat and revealed her face. She replied, "Yes, I am. How should I address you?" The person didn't answer her. Instead, he waved at her and said, "Follow me." After saying that, he turned around and flew into the depths of the forest. "Is there anything that can't be said here?" Wu Lishua shouted. She looked around and felt that it was a bit gloomy. In fact, it was because of the humidity in the forest. The person still didn't answer her and flew into the depths of the forest. Wu Lishua thought for a moment and realized that there was probably no one in the world who would dare to hurt him. In addition, he really wanted to know about Yu Qianqiu's situation. He gritted his teeth and foolishly flew after him. However, she was still a little vigilant. She kept a distance and looked back from time to time. When she saw that the whole Wu clan had become a small piece of land, she couldn't help but shout nervously, "Who are you? If you don't say anything, I'm going back." At this moment, the person in front of her went into the forest and disappeared. Wu Lishua stopped in the air and didn't know whether she should follow him or not. Suddenly, the person's voice came from afar again. "Come. Right here. I can tell you anything you want to know." Wu Lishua hesitated for a moment and continued to fly forward. Soon she arrived at the place where the person disappeared. She saw that there was a huge empty space in the forest. It was bare rocks and some weeds were stubbornly growing out from the cracks in the rocks. The person stood there with his hands behind his back, waiting for her silently. It was as if he knew that she would definitely follow him. Wu Lishua looked around and gritted her teeth. She landed behind the person and asked, "You said that you are Yu Qianqiu's friend. What's your name?" "Miss Xue, we've met a few times in the past. You might not remember me." Shouchen slowly turned around and smiled at Wu Lishua. "I didn't expect Miss Xue to still be so beautiful. You haven't changed at all. We've met in the past." Wu Lishua thought about it doubtfully. She felt that the person's eyes were a little familiar, but she couldn't remember where they had met. She shook her head and said, "Forget it. Didn't you say that you know where Yu Qianqiu is and what he's doing? Please tell me. I'm really happy to be able to meet Miss Xue alone here. Maybe it's because it's not easy to recognize me in this form. When I change back to my original form, Miss Xue will be able to remember who I am." Shouchen clasped his hands together and pointed at his forehead. He shouted, "Appearance comes from the heart. Return me my true form." A wave of black mist immediately spread out and wrapped around his body. This strange scene caused Wu Lishua to take a step back in fear. At the same time, the crow that was resting on Wu Lishua's shoulders suddenly opened its eyes. It stared at the surging black mist with a sharp gaze as if it was facing a great enemy. Suddenly the black mist shrunk and Yan Zhuixing appeared. He asked with a smile, "Miss Xue, do you still remember me?" Wu Lishua stammered in horror, You're Yan Zhuixing. Aren't you already dead?" She subconsciously took a step back. The grudge between Yu Qianqiu and Yan Zhuixing was known to everyone in the cultivation world. If there was anyone who dared to go against Yu Qianqiu in the cultivation world, it would be Yan Zhuixing. Wu Lishua couldn't help but be afraid. "That Lady Xue is looking down on me too much. Yu Qianqiu's little tricks aren't enough to kill me." Yan Zhuixing slowly walked towards the retreating Wu Lishua and said with a faint smile, "Miss Xue, we're old acquaintances. Are you afraid of me? Why did you trick me here?" Wu Lishua retreated in horror. Suddenly, she twisted her body and fled into the air. "Run. Since you're here, stay and accompany me." Yan Zhuixing opened his mouth and 7 devilish spirit snakes flew out quickly. In the blink of an eye, they caught up with the escaping Wu Lishua. They wrapped her tightly in the air and dragged her back like a stick. Wu Lishua, who was dragged back to the ground, struggled hard, but it was of no use. With her current cultivation, how could she get rid of Yan Zhuixing's devilish spirit snakes? The strange thing was that the crow on her shoulder was nowhere to be seen. However, Yan Zhuixing didn't care about a small pet crow at all. Seeing that she couldn't escape and Yan Zhuixing was approaching, Wu Lishua hurriedly shouted, "Help! Yu Qianqiu, help me." The help didn't come, but Yan Zhuixing was shocked. He mistakenly thought that Yu Qianqiu was nearby. He quickly looked around and heard Wu Lishua crying, "Yu Qianqiu, where are you? Come and save Xue." He breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that this woman was crying for help with her only hope. In fact, Yu Qianqiu wasn't here at all. No. Yan Zhuixing's eyes were cold. So what if Yu Qianqiu was here? I'm going to settle the score with him anyway. There's no reason to be afraid of him. What are you shouting for? If you shout again, I'll let it get into your mouth. Yan Zhuixing shouted in a deep voice, and the demonic spirit snake that entangled Wu Lixue immediately stuck its head out. The ferocious snake head flicked its tongue in and out of Wu Lixue's mouth, and its red eyes looked cold and cruel. Women were born to be afraid of snakes. She was so scared that she didn't dare to shout anymore. She closed her mouth tightly, only her tears kept flowing out and she kept shaking her head. Seeing that she stopped shouting, the snake's head slowly retracted. Yan Zhuixing's eyes swept slightly to the sky. He saw that the crow fluttered its wings and flew down from the sky. It landed on Wu Lixue's shoulder without fear and stared at him coldly. Its eyes were a bit like a human's, full of arrogance. Of all the things you want to raise, you raise a crow. You deserve to be Wu Lixue. You're different from ordinary women. Yan Zhuixing sneered. He walked to Wu Lixue and pulled off the gauze hat on her head. He threw it away casually. Then he pinched Wu Lixue's chin and slowly raised it, asking, "I don't understand. What's so good about that scumbag Yu Qianzhou? He left you here and didn't care about you at all. It means that he doesn't care about you at all. If it weren't for him, you wouldn't have suffered like this. I'm different. I've always cared about you. If you're willing to follow me, I promise you won't have to suffer anymore." Chapter 958. Woo Woo. Wu Lixue shook her head hard and got rid of the hand that was pinching her chin. "What? Do you hate me that much? Which part of me can't be compared to Yu Qianzhou, that villain?" Yan Zhuixing's hand touched Wu Lixue's face again and wiped the tears on her cheeks. "Your skin is so good. I really don't want to force myself on you, Shui. Promise to be my woman. I can give you whatever he can give you. I can give you whatever he can't. In short, I can give you whatever you want." Ugh. Wu Lixue bit on Yan Zhuixing's hand. She bit with all her might. However, Yan Zhuixing didn't react at all. He allowed Wu Lixue to bite his hand. His eyes gradually turned fierce. Suddenly he pulled his hand back and slapped Wu Lixue's face. He shouted angrily, "Bitch! I gave you a chance but you didn't want it. You asked for it." A palm print immediately appeared on Wu Lixue's face. Wu Lixue sobbed as she slowly turned her head around. Choking with pain, she said, "Yu Qianzhou, quickly come and save Shui." Her voice suddenly stopped, and two bewitching red lights suddenly flashed before her eyes. Her consciousness gradually sank and she forgot the pain and everything. "Bitch!" Yan Zhuixing cursed with anger. As the bewitching red light in his eyes disappeared, his eyes were replaced by beast-like madness. He opened his mouth and the 7 demonic spiritual snakes immediately let go of Wu Lixue and went back into his mouth. Yan Zhuixing stared at Wu Lixue, who was standing in front of him obediently. His face was filled with excitement. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Yu Qianzhou, I want to see how you will react after your woman becomes my woman. Do you know? Your pain will be my greatest joy." He stretched his right hand to Wu Lixue's neck and broke the cloak rope tied to her shoulder. At the same time, Yan Zhuixing let out a cry of pain and dodged with a teleport. From the back of his right palm to his elbow, there were 5 bloody holes. Blood dripped down from the 5 fingers of his right palm. Yan Zhuixing looked at Wu Lixue in disbelief. The inconspicuous crow on Wu Lixue's shoulder was flapping its wings in front of Wu Lixue, as though it was protecting him. It was this inconspicuous crow that had taken advantage of his moment of carelessness to launch a sneak attack at lightning speed. If it weren't for his quick reaction, he would have more than 5 bloody holes on his body. Looking at the 5 bloody holes on his arm, Yan Zhuixing was very surprised. With the toughness of his demonic body, how could a small crow hurt him? Squinting his eyes to take a closer look, he immediately discovered that this crow was somewhat different from ordinary crows. There were 3 colorful feathers on its head, and the feathers were faintly glowing with a purplish-blue luster. Its beak and claws were golden in color, and its eyes were filled with a human-like charm. So it's a spirit beast. I was wondering why she would bring a crow with her. Yan Zhuixing's arm shook, and 5 strands of black miasma immediately gathered on the 5 bloody holes. After a while, the 5 strands of black miasma gradually shrank. In the blink of an eye, the 5 bloody holes on his arm disappeared, and the skin on his arm returned to normal. "You're courting death, beast." Yan Zhuixing shouted coldly, and his 5 fingers formed a claw with black miasma. With a whoosh, he appeared in front of Wu Lixue and directly grabbed the fluttering crow, wanting to use his demonic claws to kill it. However, this crow was not to be trifled with. It opened its mouth and spat out an orange-red flame, which quickly enveloped its opponent. Yan Zhuixing did not care about a mere flame. Even if the flame enveloped him, he still wanted to use his demonic claws to take the life of the crow. However, Yan Zhuixing soon discovered that there was something wrong with the flame. Once he rushed into the orange-red flame, the black miasma that enveloped the demonic claws immediately let out a sizzling sound. Yan Zhuixing felt an unbearable pain all over his body, as though countless steel needles were pricking him. This flame could restrain his demonic technique? Yan Zhuixing turned pale with fright, and his figure quickly retreated from the flame. He did not know that this flame had a name, which was Phoenix Flame. It was not something ordinary flames could compare to. It specialized in restraining some evil things, and his demonic technique was no exception. This was because the crow's cultivation was shallow. Otherwise, with his cultivation he would not be able to escape from the Phoenix Flame. The flame that was spat out by the crow's mouth quickly wrapped around its body, and the fire wings that extended out made it seem like the crow had turned into a dignified big bird. This kind of bird was very beautiful, and Yan Zhuixing had never seen it before. However, how could Yan Zhuixing be frightened by a strange bird? A gloomy expression appeared on his face as he sneered, "What a loyal little beast! Demonic fist." Before he finished speaking, he had already rushed into the flame like a meteor and punched out. Bang! The flame dissipated and the crow could not dodge in time. It let out a miserable cry and was beaten into the deep forest. It was unknown whether it was dead or alive. After forcefully killing the crow, Yan Zhuixing snorted coldly, "Can't even withstand a single blow." He strode in front of Wu Lixue and grabbed her collar, wanting to tear off her clothes and do that beastly thing. However, at this moment, a weak female voice suddenly came from the deep forest. "Sister Xue, I can't beat him." "Run, run. There's someone." Yan Zhuixing was shocked and quickly looked over. He saw the crow that was sent flying wobbly for a while before landing on the ground and bouncing a few times. Then it flew up again and landed on the ground and bounced a few times. It was spitting out a human voice with blood on its mouth. The one who spoke was this crow. It can actually speak? Yan Zhuixing felt it was strange. He had never seen an animal that could speak in the human world, and it was a clear and melodious female voice. Looking at the fluttering crow, Yan Zhuixing's lips suddenly curled into an evil smile. He looked at Wu Lixue and said, "Shue's figure is really not bad. I have never seen it before. Xue, take off your clothes and let me have a look." However, to Yan Zhuixing's surprise, Wu Lixue stood there with her brows slightly furrowed. She did not have any reaction at all. Yan Zhuixing was a little surprised and stunned. He had never seen anyone disobeying his command when he was controlled by his demonic eyes. He immediately shouted, "Take off your clothes. Take them off." As soon as he said that, Wu Lixue's expression immediately became extremely painful. She seemed to be doing something intense in her heart. Damn it. Yan Zhuixing's expression twitched. He had never encountered such a strange thing. With a ferocious expression, he lost his patience. He raised his arm and was about to do it himself. However, before his hand touched Wu Lixue, he saw a ball of faint light suddenly burst out from Wu Lixue's body. It wrapped around Wu Lixue and kept shining as if it wanted to avoid all evil. As soon as the light shone on Yan Zhuixing's hand, Yan Zhuixing immediately let out a strange cry. There was a bone-piercing pain from his palm. It was simply unbearable. It was 100 times more painful than the fire that the crow spat out. Yan Zhuixing didn't dare to touch the light again. He quickly retreated and dodged. He looked at Wu Lixue in shock. He couldn't figure out what was going on. Wu Lixue, who was wrapped in the light, still had a pained expression on his face. However, as the light pulsed, a group of faint light spots gently surged out of Wu Lixue's body. Those light spots were sparkling and translucent like little 7-colored stars, sparkling delicately. After a while, countless colorful light spots surged out and gathered into a dreamy galaxy, wrapping Wu Lixue in it. At this time Wu Lixue was as holy as a dreamy goddess. She was in a dreamy world which made Yan Zhuixing dumbfounded. The colorful nebula seemed to feel Wu Lixue's pain, so it separated a wisp and went into her nasal cavity as she breathed. The pain on Wu Lixue's face immediately eased. After a while, the colorful nebula came out again, but it was wrapped in a wisp of wriggling mist like a red nematode. The red mist struggled desperately, as if it wanted to get back into Wu Lixue's nasal cavity. However, the 7-colored nebula did not intend to let it go at all. As soon as it was wrapped up, it immediately formed an unpredictable orbit like the nebula in the night sky, and immediately crushed the red mist into nothingness. At that moment Wu Lixue's eyes slowly opened. Her eyes were clear and bright. She looked around at her surroundings in a daze. She didn't know what had happened, but the nebula around her was really beautiful. Yan Zhuixing's body trembled. He found that his control over Wu Lixue seemed to have been removed by an unknown magical power. His mouth was dry and his throat moved. He said, "As expected of the Schwerer that I like. You are indeed not comparable to ordinary women. Today I must have you." Yan Zhuixing immediately raised his demonic arts to the limit. Who knew that as soon as he flashed over, he saw a colorful nebula like a rock spreading its wings. An aura that made his heart palpitate forced him to retreat subconsciously. Damn it. Yan Zhuixing looked at the surging colorful nebula fiercely. He couldn't imagine that he would encounter such a strange thing. He actually couldn't get close to Wu Lixue. After the seven-colored nebula collided with Yan Zhuixing just now, it immediately changed. It surged and transformed into the shape of a big dreamy bird, wrapping Wu Lixue in it. Its feathers fluttered in the air, looking very beautiful. It was exactly the same as the firebird that Yan Zhuixing saw before. However, it was bigger and its lifelike majestic aura was far better than the crow just now. The colorful nebula on the bird's head condensed a pair of phoenix eyes that stared coldly at Yan Zhuixing. An ancient and vigorous aura gradually became dignified. It was an indescribable noble aura. It was like an eternal royal family was looking down on a lowly ant under its feet. Its expression was so disdainful. The fluttering crow that was said to have feet that didn't touch the ground seemed to be stunned by the scene in front of it. Then it seemed to have thought of something and cried out. It flapped its wings on the ground and shouted, "It's the Phoenix Cloud Robe. Sister Xue has the Phoenix Cloud Robe to protect her." Chapter 959. Who knew that it would be too happy and fall into a small puddle with an "iya" sound. It really confirmed what it said before. It didn't have a good ending once it landed on the ground. However, it jumped out of the puddle like a drowned rat and shook its feathers. It was still full of energy as it shouted, "Phoenix Cloud Robe, Phoenix Cloud Robe." What was the Phoenix Cloud Robe? Yan Zhuixing looked suspiciously at the jumping crow. To be honest, he was quite impressed with this crow. It didn't die even after taking a devil punch from him. Looking at the big bird flapping its rainbow nebula wings, Wu Lixue seemed to be flapping its wings to fly to the eternal stars of the universe. "I want to see whether your Phoenix Cloud Robe is stronger or my devil blade is stronger." Yan Zhuixing sneered. A cold crescent moon flashed out and floated behind him. It swayed faintly and caused the surrounding air to tremble. A cold blood-red light flowed on the curved blade, and the ancient black magic patterns also exuded an ancient aura, suppressing the crows by the puddle and causing them to shiver in fear, looking at the cold and merciless crescent moon in horror. Yan Zhuixing pointed with his cold eyes. The crescent moon behind him immediately turned into an arc of light and shot out like a cold lightning. There was no movement at all. It was so sudden that there wasn't even a ripple in the air. In the blink of an eye, it had already slashed at the noble neck of the big rainbow bird. At this moment, a pair of dreamy starry wings folded in front of it and silently blocked the crescent moon. The crescent moon struggled in the nebula. It was as if it had fallen into a ball of cotton, unable to exert its strength. "It's only a so-so." Yan Zhuixing waved his arm and spread his fingers. The crescent moon effortlessly spiraled out of the nebula. The two starry wings were immediately cut into countless glittering spots by the crescent moon. Even the big bird's head was smashed into pieces. Wu Lixue retreated in fear. The scattered rainbow-colored spots gathered back and returned to the big bird in the blink of an eye. It can't even withstand a single blow. The crescent moon flashed back. Yan Zhuixing had tested his opponent's limits with a single strike. He clicked his tongue and laughed. "Xue, this Phoenix Cloud Robe might be a good item, but you don't seem to know how to control and use it. Don't make any more pointless resistance. If I want to kill you, it'll be as easy as flipping my hand. Obediently obey me and I'll suffer less." "Sister Xue, don't you know how to control the Phoenix Cloud Robe?" The crow desperately flew towards Wu Lixue. Wu Lixue shook his head in horror, indicating that he really did not know how to control it. "Let me try to help you and see if there's any way." The slowly flying crow suddenly froze in the air. "Little Sister Phoenix." Wu Lixue suddenly let out a cry of surprise. She covered her mouth with both hands and looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. She saw that the black crescent moon's sharp hook had pierced into the crow's abdomen and pierced through it. The crow was hanging on the sharp hook as it slowly lowered its head in shock to look at its abdomen. "Sister Xue, I'm so scared. I can't move." The crow spread its wings but was unable to fly. It seemed to be abnormally panicked. The crescent moon flashed back and Yan Zhuixing indifferently grabbed the crow hanging on the demonic blade. He looked at it before casually throwing it in front of Wu Lixue. He sneered, don't force me to make a move. If you don't obey me, then this crow's fate will be the same as yours. The crescent moon quickly arrived in front of Wu Lixue as if it was making a final ultimatum. He was feeling a little depressed now. He did not expect that his demonic eye would be unable to control Wu Lixue. If Wu Lixue did not obey him, he would have to use force. The crow laid on the ground weakly and raised its head, saying in a stutter, Sister Shui, think of a way to find the bad guy. He has a way to save me. It could not even catch its breath as its head fell to the ground, its eyes slowly closing, and it breathed no more. Little Sister Phoenix. Wu Lixue cried out in grief. She seemed to think of something and she kept muttering, bad guy, find a bad guy to save you. She frantically rummaged through her storage bag. The bad guy that the crow was talking about was none other than Yu Qianzhou. It had always called Yu Qianzhou a bad guy. Wu Lixue suddenly remembered that Yu Qianzhou had given her a few small silver balls and told her how to use them. Yu Qianzhou said that if she wanted to find him, she could use these silver balls to contact him and he would rush over as soon as possible. She grabbed the few silver balls in her hands and quickly injected her divine sense into them. She held them in front of her chest and prayed with tears streaming down her face. Yu Qianzhou, where are you? Come and save little Sister Phoenix. Come and save Shui. Yan Zhuixing did not know what she was holding in her hands and praying crazily. He sneered, Shui, my patience is limited. In the World Chamber of Commerce in the Immortal Realm, Yu Nantian and Yu Qianzhou were sitting face to face in a small conference room on the 21st floor discussing something. After listening to all the information that Yu Nantian had inquired about, Yu Qianzhou fell into deep thought. He then knocked on the table with his 5 fingers and said, there is something that you need to pay more attention to. Although we don't have the ability to participate in the ranking conference, we still need to find a way to get a pass to the Netherworld. So you need to pay more attention to whether there are any declining sects that are selling a pass to the Netherworld. We need to buy one in preparation to go to the Netherworld. Yu Nantian could not help but smile bitterly. Now that the Heartless Palace is watching us so closely, I'm afraid that even if we get a pass to the Netherworld, we won't have a chance to go to the Netherworld. It is precisely because of the threat of the Heartless Palace that we need to get this thing as soon as possible. There are 2 reasons. Yu Qianzhou stretched out 2 of his 5 fingers that were knocking on the table and said, the sects in the Immortal Realm are constantly sending people into the Netherworld, so it is obvious that the Netherworld is a place to make a fortune. This is indisputable. Yu Nantian nodded and then he heard Yu Qianzhou say, this is the first reason. The second reason is that I want to find my master in the Netherworld. This Heartless Palace is really too troublesome. It binds us in the hallucinatory immortal city and we can't go out to do things. With our strength we can't go against it, so I have to ask my master for help. Damn it. Let the old man directly flatten the Heartless Palace, then everything will be over. I don't want to be long-winded. By Changchun. Yu Nanshan's eyes lit up. That old man was definitely a powerful person of his generation. He was the guy who dared to challenge the Emperor of the Underworld and shock the 3 realms. If they really found him, it should be easy to flatten the Heartless Palace. The Heartless Palace could not be more powerful than the Emperor of the Underworld, right? The most important thing was that if everyone had Bai Changchun as their backer, then many things would be easy to do. His idea was good, but he didn't know that Yu Qianzhou had no confidence in finding Bai Changchun. Even if he did find him, Bai Changchun might not help. This was because the old man probably had no interest in the Heartless Palace. The only thing that could interest him in the Immortal Realm was probably the Immortal Emperor medal. In short, the reason why Yu Qianzhou said this was to encourage Yu Nantian, so that he would try his best to find some clues about the Netherworld token as soon as possible. After Yu Nanshan's excitement, he thought of reality and said hesitantly, this thing might not be easy to get. Every sect wants as many Netherworld tokens as possible. I'm afraid that the tokens in the hands of those declining sects have long been targeted by other sections. I'm afraid that they would be taken away by other sects before we get to buy them. As long as there is news, there will naturally be a way. Yu Qianzhou's finger paused on the table and he sneered, to think that a small merchant association like the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce could think of a way to get the Netherworld token. We are much stronger than the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce in the past. There is no reason that they can get it, but we can't. Yu Nantian knew that he and Mu Bing of the 4 Links Chamber of Commerce had a grudge, so this matter would probably not be resolved peacefully. He nodded and stood up saying, okay, I understand. I will go find out about the netherworld token. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything, he cupped his hands and left. Mu Bing. I hope that your son-in-law can protect you for a lifetime. Don't give me a chance to make a move or you will cry. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and snorted. Then he seemed to have thought of something and also stood up to leave the conference room. When he reached the 22nd floor, he saw that Wei Chuanqiu was still sitting cross-legged in front of Bai Suzhen's door. Yu Qianqiu pushed open the door and entered another room. The floor of the room was filled with fist-sized yellow-skinned spider eggs. They were the eggs of the temple rainbow spiders from the god Ruin realm. After Yu Qianqiu closed the door, he carefully walked among them. From time to time he would pick one up and look at it. Through the light he could see that the spider inside was already so big. It was constantly moving its 8 claws in the liquid inside the sphere. It looks like it's not far from hatching. I'm afraid it's not suitable to raise them here. When the time comes, the entire World Chamber of Commerce will be crawling with spiders. Yu Qianqiu muttered as he held the spider eggs in his hand. Finally, after much consideration, he decided to put them in the god Ruin realm. Once these 1,000 or so spider eggs hatched, it would be enough to equip over 1,000 people. Moreover, there was enough food in the god Ruin realm. If he could find a way to speed up the reproduction rate, then everyone in the army of nearly 10,000 would be able to carry a temple rainbow spider. Presumably, the power of battle would be greatly increased. Once he had a plan, he had to carry it out. Just as he was about to transfer all the spider eggs in the room to the god Ruin realm, Yu Qianqiu was suddenly startled. He frowned and said, "It's Shuer. Why is she looking for me? No, she seems to be very agitated. Did something happen?" Yu Qianqiu was shocked and instantly disappeared from the room. "Shuer, it looks like you won't agree no matter what. Good, very good. Maybe using force will have a different taste. You forced me to do this, don't blame me." Yan Zhuixing let out a cold laugh. Wu Lixue immediately retreated in fright. She hugged the silver balls with both hands and said with a trembling voice, Yu Qianqiu, you're here." She suddenly exclaimed as she looked behind Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing was startled and then said with a sneer, "Shuer, don't you think it's too childish of you to play this diversion trick in front of me? I advise you to obey me, lest you suffer more when I use force. At that time, don't blame me for not showing mercy to the fairer sex." Chapter 960. Before coming here, Yu Qianqiu had suspected that something had happened to Wu Lixue, but he never expected that such a thing would happen. There was actually such a bold madman in the world who dared to make his woman submit to him. Did he really think that it was a joke that he had spent so much effort to monopolize the power of the world? Who was the one with the problem in his head? Yu Qianqiu looked at Wu Lixue, who was shivering in the dreamy nebula, and got furious. He suddenly looked at the back of the person in front of him and found that the person was wearing clothes that were one size smaller than his body size. His arms and legs were exposed. How could an ordinary person come out to meet others like this? Yu Qianqiu couldn't help feeling a little depressed. It seemed that it was really a crazy guy. Forget it. Killing him could be considered as getting rid of the evil in the world. Which idiot came here to court death? Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily and was about to kill the person with a palm. There was really someone behind him. Yan Zhuixing was shocked. He didn't even notice that someone was behind him. He was so scared that his scalp went numb. He suddenly moved away and the crescent followed him like a shadow to protect him. After dodging, he looked at the person. Yu Qianqiu. Yan Zhuixing. After the two of them saw each other's appearance, they almost let out a cry of surprise at the same time. Yu Qianqiu didn't even think about why Yan Zhuixing would appear here. His first reaction was to check Wu Lixue's condition again. Through the dreamy nebula that slightly hindered his vision, he saw that there was a faint palm print on Wu Lixue's tearful face. Naturally, it wasn't Wu Lixue who slapped herself. It was needless to say who did it. Wu Lixue was actually slapped by Yan Zhuixing. Yu Qianqiu's expression changed abruptly and instantly turned greenish-black. His anger rushed to his brain. At this moment he couldn't wait to destroy the world. He couldn't vent his anger without killing. Yu Qianqiu, he killed Sister Phoenix. Wu Lixue knelt on the ground sobbing, hugging Crow's body in her arms as she sobbed, not saying a word about being beaten up. As soon as Yu Qianqiu arrived, she immediately felt that she had someone to rely on. The dreamy nebula that shrouded her also seemed to feel safe. After hovering for a while, it slowly shrank back into her body. Yu Qianqiu's heart was already riddled with holes because of Wu Lixue's crying. It was not an exaggeration to say that his heart was being cut by a knife. He did not care whether the crow was dead or alive at all. His murderous aura burst out uncontrollably. He pointed his finger at Yan Zhuixing and said, "Are you still king man? Why do you keep finding women to kill? I'll ck your ancestors. Who do you think you are? It's the same here." Yan Zhuixing waved his hand casually, and the crescent moon appeared in front of him like a ghost ready to strike. "I can wear out iron shoes and fruitless searching, only to find what I'm looking for without even looking for it. I was just thinking about how to lure you out and kill you. I didn't expect you to deliver yourself to me. Very well. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving. The grudges between us are written off today. Hook your mother. Don't even think about leaving today." Yu Qianqiu spat. Seeing that Yan Zhuixing was not afraid at all after seeing him, he immediately calmed down. Yan Zhuixing must have something to rely on. After a closer look, he immediately found that Yan Zhuixing's cultivation had actually increased to the soul formation final stage. He could not help but be shocked by the magic of demonic arts. Not only did a person who was beaten into a pulp and turned into ashes by him revive, his cultivation could also skyrocket. If he was allowed to continue developing, it would be a great disaster. The scene of Yan Zhuixing being rescued by a ball of mysterious black light surfaced in Yu Qianqiu's mind. That scene made Yu Qianqiu deeply apprehensive. That bastard was the successor of a demon god. What if he was saved by the mysterious black light after he was killed? Did he have to be wary of this bastard every day? "Bastard, you can't leave this time." A fierce look flashed across Yu Qianqiu's face. He remembered that immortal crocodile had once said that the divine sword should be able to deal with that black light. This thought flashed quickly in his mind. Yu Qianqiu had an idea in his mind, and his eyes suddenly focused on the crescent moon floating in the air. He had seen Qiu Wuyuan use it in the 100 Flowers Valley, so he naturally knew what it was. He immediately narrowed his eyes and snorted coldly. "Black Moon Pagoda? Great. I was right. The 10,000 demons are quite bold. They actually dared to go against me. You really deserve it. Black Moon Pagoda?" Yan Zhuixing suddenly laughed wildly and waved his hand in high spirits. He said proudly, "I might as well let you know when you die. This thing should be called the Demon Blade. It is a divine weapon personally refined by the demon god countless years ago. Countless experts from the 3 realms have died under it. Yu Qianqiu, do you dare? A divine weapon personally refined by the demon god." Yu Qianqiu was slightly surprised, but he immediately swung his arms. A violent wind behind him fluttered his robes, and his entire body burst out with dazzling purple light. 10,000 purple flying swords soared into the sky from his back like a purple dragon soaring into the sky. A valiant prowess that could intimidate one's soul spread out in an earth-shattering manner. Subsequently, the 10,000 purple flying swords rapidly formed a formation with lightning speed and surrounded Yan Zhuixing in the blink of an eye. "Let alone the demon god, even the heavenly king can't save you today." Yu Qianqiu revealed a sinister smile and said, "Retreat to a distant place first. Wait for me to kill this bastard that only knows how to bully women." This was the first time he used the purple flame flying swords without any scruples. Furthermore, he released 10,000 at once. It was obvious that Yan Zhuixing had touched Wu Lishua's bottom line, and he wouldn't be able to vent his anger if he didn't kill Wu Lishua. Just as Wu Lishua was hugging the dead crow and flying back while wiping her tears, there were several sharp whistles that echoed from the Wu clan's direction. In a blink of an eye, over a dozen individuals flew over rapidly. Yu Qianqiu and Yan Zhuixing turned their heads to take a look and saw Wu Sihai leading the Wu clan's elders and elders over. There were still people arriving one after another. The various factions' people were also alarmed by the commotion of Yu Qianqiu releasing the 10,000 swords. They all rushed over to see what was going on. When Wu Sihai and the others saw that it was Yu Qianqiu and Yan Zhuixing, they were astonished. Wu Lishua immediately rushed to her grandfather in tears and recounted how she was bullied. "All of you retreat further away." Yu Qianqiu yelled out sternly and took the initiative to make a move. The 10,000 purple flame flying swords immediately turned into 10,000 rays of purple light and shot towards Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing was shocked by the thunderous power, and he immediately felt that his cultivation was far inferior to Yu Qianqiu's. He immediately opened his 5 fingers toward the demonic blade, and with a roar, he soared into the sky toward the countless purple flying swords that were coming at him. The demonic blade floating in front of him suddenly erupted with a boundless ferocious aura. It spread out in all directions and suddenly became a dozen meters long. With a whoosh, it hovered above Yan Zhuixing's head. It spun rapidly like an umbrella, opening a path for Yan Zhuixing, who was trying to break out of the encirclement. Dang dang dang. A series of explosions pushed the countless purple fragments in all directions. In the blink of an eye, Yan Zhuixing forcefully broke out of the dense net of swords. The flying swords that missed him hit the ground with a boom. Dust and smoke rose up and a huge pit was blasted out by the purple flame flying swords. Yu Qianzhou was secretly shocked. It was indeed a godly weapon refined by a demon god. Even the purple flame flying swords couldn't hurt it at all. Instead, it destroyed quite a lot of them. Seeing that the flying swords couldn't do anything to him, Yu Qianzhou spread his arms. Countless purple fragments and flying swords flew towards him and were all kept into his sleeves. His entire body seemed to have turned into a stream of light and shot towards Yan Zhuixing, who was in the sky. Since treasures didn't work, he didn't need to rely on treasures. He believed that it wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Yan Zhuixing with his current cultivation. Yan Zhuixing, who was floating in the inner arc of the crescent moon, spread out his 5 fingers. The crescent moon immediately expanded to 100 meters. It was tangible and it wasn't just an illusion. A majestic and ferocious aura was emitted like a hazy gray fog. A breathtaking blood glow flowed on the giant crescent moon blade. It was as though there was an invisible giant hand holding a butcher's knife, eyeing the vast land covetously and wanting to slaughter. The crowd, who had been shocked by the aftershock of their battle, turned around and looked at the scene in the sky in shock. They thought to themselves that Yan Zhuixing indeed had something to rely on, since he dared to challenge Yu Qianzhou again. Within the inner arc of the giant crescent moon, Yan Zhuixing looked at the charging stream of light without any change in expression. He spread out his 5 fingers again and charged towards Yu Qianzhou fearlessly. The crescent moon of the demonic blade immediately flashed in front of Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing hid in the inner arc of the demonic blade. The hearts of the crowd in the distance immediately jumped to their throats. They saw the giant crescent moon blade slash down from the sky, and the stream of light that Yu Qianzhou had transformed into was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He overestimated himself and ran to commit suicide. Wu Lixue, who was watching the battle, bit her lips tightly. Her face was pale from nervousness. Break! Yu Qianzhou shouted angrily in the sky. He pushed out his palm and faced the demonic blade that was slashing towards him. He used the metal art, intending to shatter it. However, he immediately realized that something was wrong. The demonic blade was enveloped by an invisible power. The metal art couldn't penetrate it at all. There was nothing he could do to it. He was shocked and quickly dodged with a teleportation, narrowly avoiding the giant demonic blade that was slashing towards his head. Boom! The earth trembled violently. The giant demonic blade directly sank into the ground, tearing a huge crack that was thousands of meters long on the spot. Before the smoke and dust could disperse, the light that was hundreds of meters long quickly shot from the ground to the sky. Like a sky-splitting axe, it chased after Yu Qianzhou in the sky. Yu Qianzhou turned into a stream of light and dodged. Then he suddenly disappeared in the sky. Yan Zhuixing was shocked to see that he had lost his opponent's target. He closed his eyes and pointed between his eyebrows with 2 fingers. The sharp edge of the giant crescent moon suddenly changed direction. Where the sharp edge pointed, it forced Yu Qianzhou to appear in the middle of teleportation. He almost sent himself to the blade. What a nimble speed! Yu Qianzhou took a deep breath. He didn't expect such a huge guy to change so quickly. It was actually faster than his teleportation. He wanted to use the speed of teleportation to instantly approach Yan Zhuixing and kill him, but the demonic blade easily stopped him. Chapter 961. However, Yu Qianzhou swore to kill him and naturally wouldn't stop. He immediately vanished from the sky and used instant shift to attack from all directions. However, the devil blade's speed of transformation was simply unbelievably swift, and it protected Yan Zhuixing at the center as it spun like a ball. Everywhere its edge pointed, it forced Yu Qianzhou to appear from all directions, and he was utterly unable to approach Yan Zhuixing. Such a situation gave Yu Qianzhou a feeling that he was committing suicide by charging at his opponent's blade. Meanwhile, Yan Zhuixing was like the axis of a sphere and was safely in the center. The devil blade would naturally help him resist all external threats. What made Yu Qianzhou most angry was that Yan Zhuixing was actually hiding in the center with his eyes closed to defend. Yu Qianzhou might know that Yan Zhuixing was concentrating on controlling the devil blade, but it still infuriated Yu Qianzhou. Yan Zhuixing was simply condescending. Many of the spectators in the distance looked at each other in dismay. Everyone saw that Yu Qianzhou couldn't do anything to Yan Zhuixing, and this result was indeed out of everyone's expectations. Many people were even guessing that the divine weapon in Yan Zhuixing's hand was only used for defense and hadn't displayed its offensive prowess yet. If Yan Zhuixing was to use the divine weapon to counterattack, would Yu Qianqiu be able to block it? If Yu Qianqiu was defeated, then the entire cultivation world situation would be reversed. Perhaps Yan Zhuixing would replace Yu Qianqiu's position. Once this thought was born, everyone's expression immediately changed unpredictably. The Wu clansmen led by Wu Sihai had an abnormally grave expression. The relationship between the four major clans and Yu Qianqiu was well known in the cultivation world. If Yan Zhuixing won, the four major clans' end would be obvious. Naturally, there were also disciples of the 10,000 demons on Hat Island. When the disciples of the 10,000 demons saw this scene, they looked at each other with a hint of excitement in their eyes. Anyone could tell that the divine weapon in Yan Zhuixing's hand was the Black Moon Pagoda in the hands of the previous sect master, Yan Wuqian. Yan Zhuixing had used the Black Moon Pagoda to challenge Yu Qianqiu. His relationship with the 10,000 demons was self-evident. Once Yan Zhuixing defeated Yu Qianqiu, then the 10,000 demons, the hearts of the 10,000 demons' disciples couldn't help but beat wildly, but they didn't dare to show the slightest flaw on their faces. After all, no one could guarantee victory until the end of the battle. The few of them were afraid of being seen through by others, so they couldn't help but secretly look around, only to discover that there were already many people glancing at them faintly. Regardless of the final outcome, everyone could see that Yu Qianqiu was indeed worthy of being the world's #1 expert. His cultivation was obviously much higher than Yan Zhuixing's. Otherwise, Yan Zhuixing wouldn't have to hide in the crescent moon and not dare to come out to fight. Everyone present only knew that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation was very high, but no one knew that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation had actually broken through to the immortal realm. Even Yan Zhuixing himself didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu's cultivation would be so much higher than his. At first, he was worried that the Devil Blade wouldn't be able to block Yu Qianqiu, so he focused on controlling it. Now he realized that he had underestimated the power of the Devil Blade. He could completely block his opponent effortlessly, so he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The two fingers that were pressed together on his eyebrows loosened, and his eyes slowly opened. He looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was facing a wall in all directions, and sneered. "Yu Qianqiu, is that all you have? Are you at your wit's end? If that is the case, then it will be my turn to attack. I will let you prepare yourself so that you will be convinced of your defeat and understand who is the true #1 expert in this world." Yan Zhuixing's tone was undoubtedly insolent, and everyone's heart jumped when they heard it. They all silently thought that Yan Zhuixing still had an attack that he hadn't revealed yet. Could the battle that would decide the fate of the cultivation world be decided? Everyone in the Wu clan got nervous as they didn't know if Yu Qianqiu could block Yan Zhuixing's counterattack. Yu Qianqiu stopped his ineffective attacks and appeared in the sky. Even though he had reached the immortal realm, the continuous instant shifting was extremely tiring for him. Jianghu glanced at Wu Lixue, who was nervously grabbing his clothes, and suddenly stared at Yan Zhuixing. He spoke indifferently, "I just wanted to test the Devil Blade's power. I gave you some face, but you still took advantage of me. In my eyes, you are just like a chicken or a dog. You don't even have the qualifications to be my opponent, and you actually don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Truly pathetic and laughable. Fine. I will let you die earlier and reincarnate earlier. I can't be bothered to talk to you." A pale golden radiance flashed by, and a pale golden quaint long sword landed in his hand. Yu Qianqiu raised the long sword in his hand and wiped the edge of the blade gently while letting out a soft sigh. Even when he was in the immortal world, he had never used this divine sword. He didn't expect that the first time he used it would be against Yan Zhuixing. If it wasn't for the Devil Blade that was left behind by the demon god in Yan Zhuixing's hand, Jianghu wouldn't use it so easily. Yan Zhuixing squinted his eyes and took 2 glances at the long sword in Jianghu's hand. When he didn't see anything special about it, he immediately sneered and said, "You are the type of person who wants to save face and suffer. If I were you, I would either admit defeat obediently or run for my life. If you are trying to boost your courage by putting on airs, it will be truly pathetic and laughable." As he spoke, he looked at the spectators and continued to boast, "How do you want to die? I will grant your wish." Right now, he was full of ambition and wanted to use this battle to wipe away his previous humiliation, to intimidate the world, and to establish his position as the #1 expert in the world. "You will grant my wish?" Yu Qianqiu seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. He pointed the long sword in his hand and sneered, You are indeed a frog at the bottom of a well who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Block my sword first and then we will see if you are qualified to say such nonsense." With a loud shout, Xianxia teleported and disappeared again. The crescent blade that was protecting Yan Zhuixing suddenly pointed in one direction and forced Xianxia to reveal himself again. Yan Zhuixing was just about to ridicule Xianxia, but before he could say anything he saw the sword in Xianxia's hand suddenly erupt with an ancient aura that looked down on the world, and it rushed over like a raging wave. The devil blade that was protecting him immediately let out a rapid buzzing sound to warn him. Yan Zhuixing had a bad feeling and his pupils suddenly contracted. He saw the long sword in Xianxia's hand suddenly become a 100-meter-long longsword. The ancient longsword was covered with a glass-like golden flowing light. "Get lost!" Xianxia's thunderous roar resounded in the air. A huge longsword swept out and hit the devil blade directly. Boom! A loud sound exploded in the air, and an almost tangible air wave spread rapidly like a shock wave. The devil blade that was shining brilliantly just now couldn't withstand a single blow. It was hit by the huge longsword directly and became a black dot in the distance. The attack of the godly sword broke the impenetrable defense of the devil blade on the spot. It was completely a heavy blow without any tricks and it won fair and square. Everyone around gasped. This attack immediately burst the bubble in some people's hearts. There was no need to guess who was stronger and who was weaker. Die! Xianxia's roar resounded in the air again. In his hand, the long sword was as light as a willow in the wind. It drew a huge golden lotus in the air and wrapped around Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing's insolence had already been replaced by paleness in the face of the majestic huge longsword net. He was immediately scared out of his wits. Even the devil blade couldn't block the opponent, so it was even more impossible for his body to block the attack. However, the only direction he could dodge was behind him, so he teleported to escape without hesitation. However, it seemed to be a bit too late. With Xianxia's cultivation and speed, coupled with the fact that it had happened so suddenly and carried a hint of a sneak attack, how could he retreat safely? Pooh! A leg flew in the air with a splash of blood. A fierce look flashed across Xianxia's face. He was determined not to let his opponent go. With a shake of his arm, the longsword cut off Yan Zhuixing's leg, and the broad longsword slammed towards Yan Zhuixing, who was in a panic. The momentum seemed to want to smash Yan Zhuixing into a meat patty. Devil fist. Yan Zhuixing, who couldn't escape in time, roared in grief. He desperately punched towards the sky and directly hit the longsword. Boom! Yan Zhuixing screamed miserably, and the sound of bones shattering could be heard. One of Yan Zhuixing's arms was swaying like a piece of meat, and he violently vomited a mouthful of blood. His entire body was slammed towards the ground like a meteor. Bang! The ground shook and a sizable pit appeared. From the sky, one could vaguely see Yan Zhuixing vomiting a few mouthfuls of blood. It was obvious that he was seriously injured. However, the might of the devil fist couldn't be underestimated. It was actually able to resist the divine sword's attack and didn't die in one hit. However, how could the divine sword be so easily blocked? It might be as light as a willow catkin in Xianxia's hand, but it weighed 108,000 kilograms. In addition, when Xianxia wielded it, it was imaginable how powerful the attack was. The huge change in the blink of an eye caused everyone to tremble with fear. The Wu clansmen were extremely excited, while the disciples of the 10,000 demons were terrified. Die! Xianxia's desperate cry rang out, and the divine sword in his hand was thrown down from the sky with the might of thunder. It stabbed straight towards Yan Zhuixing, who was struggling in the deep pit. Right at this moment, a huge black light burst out from a distance and directly collided with the divine sword. It was the devil blade that was knocked away earlier that came back to save its master. Boom! The divine sword was knocked askew, and when it stabbed into the ground, it deviated from the deep pit by a few dozen meters. Xianxia took a quick glance and couldn't help but exclaim that the divine weapon refined by the demon god was truly extraordinary. It wasn't damaged by the divine sword's attack, and it was only knocked away. If Yan Zhuixing's cultivation was a little higher, the might of the sword would be even greater, and the devil blade might be able to fight against the divine sword. The devil blade saved its master, and it immediately won a chance for Yan Zhuixing to catch his breath. It protected Yan Zhuixing and flashed out of the pit together. Yan Zhuixing reached out his claw and directly sucked a leg that fell from the sky. It was the leg that was chopped off by the divine sword. At this moment, how could Yan Zhuixing not understand that he wasn't a match for Xianxia? He almost didn't hesitate to crush his severed leg into a blood mist and cried out miserably, "Blood escape! Trying to run?" Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and suddenly pulled out the giant divine sword that was stabbed into the ground. It instantly shrunk into a flying sword and turned into a golden stream of light in the direction that Yu Qianqiu pointed at. It shot into the expanding blood mist. There was a miserable scream from inside. "You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel? Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.